beginning of the end for you.
To the sky!
Bestowed upon you the power of the sun. A mighty sword! Strike while the iron's hot. For Camelot! For Avalon! Let the heavens rain! I am Ragnarok!
Howdy, Smite fans, and welcome back to the Smite Pro League on this wonderful Saturday afternoon here in Alpharetta, Georgia. We got two sets of the SPL up for you today. We got our match of the week featuring the Olympus Bolts and the Camelot Kings to start things out. We'll have some more fun later down the road. I believe we're going to have the Dragons and the Scarabs for that one. My name is J Mac Tucker, though. I'm here with Mifflin on the desk to join me for our very first set of the day, talking about the Bolts and the Kings. Will be our in-depth match of the week. And after we've already gotten to see both these teams, we kind of got an idea of what we can maybe expect to kind of go into this matchup.
Yeah, I have got really high expectations for the Kings in this one. The Bolts win was a win, so there's that. You know, the Kings coming off on an 0-1, 1-0 for the Bolts, but that was a shaky set, to say the least, between the Bolts and the Oni Warriors, whereas the Kings were lining up against the world champions, and it looked incredibly competitive. So some gleeful tweets from the Kings afterward where they're saying, hey, we're still hiding strats, but I don't know, man. If they've got more left in the tank, I'm doubly worried for the Olympus Bolts.
Yeah. As we take a look at the schedule for the remainder of our weekend, today's matches, as we say, are the Kings and the Bolts, and the Jade Dragons and the Scarabs will be our second one today. And then we can see the Scarabs and the Valkyries tomorrow. Titans, Dragons, Leviathans, Warriors will be our full remaining weekend of the SPL. 5 big sets, 3 of them being tomorrow here. We did SCC to start out these first 2 days, but we're going to have 3 big SPL sets to go out tomorrow. But let's go back here and talk about the Olympus Bolts a bit and kind of that shakier set that they had there up against the Warriors. And against that one, you know, we were talking a lot about the Warriors and how they were having a rough time at the end of last season. They kind of struggled to qualify themselves back in, and then the Bolts were still having a bit of a rough patch up against the Warriors yesterday. Not the most convincing start from this team so far.
No, but there is the argument to be made that the Olympus Bolts are trying new stuff. It's a very different look at this team than what we saw throughout the duration of Season 8. Specifically through support, Awesome Jake has legitimately shaked up his god pool a lot. We're not seeing the Emirs anymore. We haven't seen the tiers. It's Horus. We're seeing Nox, and well, I guess that makes him the villain of the league now if we're going to have Nox consistently for this guy. But it is something that worked out very well for him, but there is still some growing pains as they're trying to figure out what portion of the game do these types of compositions really hit their stride at? What are the frustration points? Where are the weaknesses of this draft? What is it that we're best at? But that said, the Olympus Bolts deserve credit for one thing, namely, it's that mental fortitude. Remember back to Game 1 against the Oni Warriors. It was a significant lead for the Onis. They had 9,000 gold, 13 some odd minutes into the game. And the Bolts, they stuck in there. They stuck in deep. They said, all right, well, we'll just hold it out. We'll play our pick-based composition. We'll play around these mages in the jungle. Again, it was Lazarus, Habois, and Poseidon. Poseidon maybe a little bit less convincing than the Habois. And eventually, they're able to turn it around in a 40-minute banger and the entire set later on.
I mean, not just between the Habois, that Camazot's in game number 3 for
that
Lazarus.
was good.
Once we started getting Lazarus to the more traditional assassin or assassin-like gods out here, he was able to step up big for his team, getting that win over there yesterday. But they're going to be squaring off against the Camelot Kings, a team that has been very vocal, at least on social media, of still hiding things out. They're still keeping things in their back pocket, waiting for that opportunity to throw it out here. And we did see some flexibility with the Olympus Bolts in some of their drafts. Namely, one of the things that was very common as far as their bans were concerned were things like the Kabrak and the Daji, very scared of those kinds of gods. Both of those gods are something that can very easily slot over here for the Kings.
And the Kings have not just got those picks, they've also got some very eclectic picks available to them. That's been their way since Season 8. They'll play the things that nobody else is looking towards. I know we just saw some Naja in the last set, but that was SEC. Twig's very willing to play it at the SPL level. We'll see things like the Arachne. Big Man Tings loves going towards these Ra's, the Kukulkans, the Zeuses of the world. So in having these stranger picks available, it makes it very difficult for some of these other teams to figure out what it is exactly they need to target out, which piece that they need to remove? Is it that the Naja is facilitating the Kukulkan? Will they still go towards the Kukulkan if Naja is banned out? Is it vice versa? Or where are you looking to limit these styles of drafts? And those questions make the Kings a very hard team to answer.
And that's one of the threats that this team brings is between big man Tings and even Netrate over into that dueling. You never know exactly what is going to be on their plate. You never know what gods are going to pop out here. I mean, Netrode was running the ROM time and time again last season, even when ROM wasn't necessarily all that great. Big man Tings has been flexing his mid-god pool for as long as he has been playing this game out here. And even Captain Twig kind of shaking things up, going between the more control-oriented style gods and like the Hunbats and the Bastet to going towards more of these hyper-carry style gods like the Bakasura that we saw yesterday.
Yeah, I hope we don't see the Bakasura again, by the way. That god certainly struggles still. But you're right to say that Twig, I think, should be the focal point of conversation around this team because I think the drafts are built out from him. Are you playing the Hun bots? Are you going towards the Surcat? Are we on our Dajis? What is it that we're going to build through jungle, and then they construct the composition around that? So that's generally why I think we start to see Twig's picks a little bit less prioritized. They know if they can get something for themselves, but they don't want to show exactly what style of draft is going to be until later on in the picks and bans.
And it's something that Trelly and I talked about, at least for the bolts considered, over anything else, really making sure that jungle can get through. But before we go on to the set, we do have a very special video lined up for you guys.
For the team, we're definitely trying to improve on improving our picks a bit, maybe getting a bit of bigger guard pools and like synergizing our team comps, because last year, and even on Renegades, we ended up being outdrafted a lot. And once you're outdrafted, the chances of winning are way lower than when you have a good draft.
For the Kings to improve this year, we need to focus more on getting consistency around the map. Last year we had a lot of fancy plays, a lot of good macro play, but I think just general map play is something that a lot of good teams have got, and we need to improve on this year.
Yeah, I feel pretty good against the Kings. They're one of the better teams in the league. They always have something new and something special coming out. So if we just prepare and do our own stuff and make them react to us, I think we have a higher chance instead of us reacting to them.
So personally against the Bolts, I think we've got a pretty good matchup. We did pretty well last year, even with 2 people on ping. I think our slow style usually works quite well against their uncontrolled and brawly style, and then usually we pull it through in the late game. I think the biggest threat might be Laspera. He usually controls the game and runs around and creates quite a bit of chaos. Yep. And it's how far he can get ahead that really matters for them.
I would say the biggest threat on the Kings would be Genetics if I had to choose one person. He's the one leading the team, always coming in with like new things. I used to team with him and he always had like, new things we had to try out or whatever it would be, like leading the team and doing all this crazy stuff. And I think he's like a meta guy.
So we have no specific way of handling Laspera, but we're just going to go in and draft what we want to draft and play at our pace, and we'll figure out how the game goes from there.
I don't really know what I specifically have a plan for him, but for the team, hopefully we're coming in with some new picks that they're not expecting and some good map play, because they're one of the teams that plays the map the best.
It kind of slipped my mind there for a moment that these two players did play together back during the SCC times, and before they were even up into the SPL, they were making strong runs up against these teams. So maybe it isn't really much of a surprise. They both see each other as the biggest threats on their team. And you saw Genetics really going into depth about making sure to shut down Laspera. That was something that Trelly and I talked in depth of yesterday about the Warriors and the Bolts matchup, is that those junglers are going to be the big pivotal points. But over here on the side of the Bolts with Laspera specifically, he really thinks that Genetics is probably the biggest threat that they need to deal with.
Yeah, maybe not play on field is what Laspera is saying. It's more so what he brings to the team as a brain, the strategies, the picks, the styles of composition, and that's what brings the bulk of Genetics' play. And that's not to say that he isn't a mechanical player, because he certainly is no slouch on the battleground. But I am curious to hear that the Bolts agree that the Camelot Kings are likely one of the, if not the best team in the league at just playing the map, just getting farm naturally by clearing out. But you don't have to hear from me what the Kings think about this set, or maybe you do, because I did an interview exactly 9 minutes ago. Let's go to that. So, this is my new favorite segment, and I know that I have to be on the desk, and let's see, is there a clock in here somewhere? 4.5 minutes till I'm going to join the desk, but I figure what better time than right now to get an impromptu interview. We got to find one of these players. They're already in the rooms, so they're probably going to hate this. This might be a quick one, maybe like a one-questioner here. We get an option. We got the Olympus Bolts. We got the Camelot Kings. But I'm going to go ahead and saunter on into the Camelot Kings room. Coach Biggie, what's going on, man? How are you feeling about today's matchup?
Feeling confident against Lasper as always.
Specifically Lasbro, you think he's like a weak link?
I think he's the strongest link, but still weak.
There you have it. The coach of the Kings with a vote of confidence for the team. Strongest link, still weak. We'll see about that.
See if the Kings can break that link on the side of the Olympus Bolts. When Lasbro's popping off, the Bolts are popping off. We'll see if they can still maintain to hold that here today. The Camelot Kings, the strategy has always been the name of the game for these guys. The gameplay on the map, their macro play has been bragged about as being one of the best out here in the league by multiple teams, by multiple of us here on the casting team as well. We talk ad nauseum really just about how much this team is able to farm and control up these games. And we heard it even during Genetics interview talking about Lasbro and talking about the Bolts as a whole, is they're going to draft for the slow, long burn play style up against this team because the Bolts are going to be a lot more scrappy going up against them.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see the budding of ideas. Like, both of these teams have very distinct ideas on how they want to approach Smite as an entire concept. So, very interested to see how this one pans out. Very interested to see that, again, Biggie agreed that Lasbro is the strongest point of the Bolts, but similarly, the weakest. Like, because he's weak, so like even though he's strong, like that means that the rest of the Bolts are super weak. I'm excited.
It's going to be interesting to really
How
see
do you feel about that?
Now, I think it's a very bold statement to make out there, and not in any kind of a negative way. That that the weakest player yet still tends to be the strongest one out here, and you're only as strong as your weakest link out here. So,
but he is weak.
But he is weak, is what the coach is saying at the very least on the side of the Camelot Kings.
So that means they're all weak because he's their strongest link.
That seems to be the way of what is that? The transitive property here. I think is what we're going out, bringing out the old days of geometry. We're going back. Somehow we always end up back to math on these desk segments with each other, Miff. I don't know how we do it.
Because you know that I'm bad at it, and you're trying to flex on me.
I'm bad at math.
Yeah, it's really rude, honestly.
We're both bad at math. I don't know why we keep trying to bring up math anytime that we are together out here, though. The Olympus Bolts, Camelot Kings, our premier match of the week. And with the performance that we saw out of both of them yesterday, I think this might be just as close, if not maybe even a tighter match than we saw yesterday from both of them.
It could be. There was a lot of data on the Olympus Bolts and how they want to play because of how long that set went. Similarly, the Camelot Kings went pretty long up against the Leviathans, but not many people are playing the same style as the Leviathans. I doubt we see the Bolts trying to emulate that, whereas the Kings, I think, can pretty easily emulate what worked for the Oni Warriors.
Picks and bans for game number 1 between the Olympus Bolts and the Camelot Kings are right underway. And first target out on the side of the Bolts is going to be Khepri. And it's so strange to see Khepri being one of the higher priorities, maybe against Genetics. Not so much of a question, but they were doing this up against the Warriors yesterday. They did not want this Guardian to get through.
Khepri is just such a valuable pick, man. He is one of the most meta-resistant Guardians, and that Scarab's Blessing is always a tool that you want. Just selectively saying, hey, you're going on this guy. Now he's over here next to me, and he's not dead. You simply cannot kill him, or it's just going to be used as a cleanse. And I think that is a strength that is especially evident towards the earlier parts of a season, towards the earlier parts where everyone's still trying to establish what works at the highest level of play. Khepri is always going to be at least somewhat decent, and that's why we see him so highly prioritized in the last couple of weeks.
And alongside the Khepri, a Horus ban out of the Bolts, another shot over at Genetics, but likewise, the Kings throw some shots over at Awesome Jake here by banning away the Nox. So we're going to see something completely different coming out of Jake this time around in this set today. Clean a ban alongside Daji, so 2 more Assassins taken out, but still a lot on the board. Erlong Shen, Gilgamesh, Bastet, to name 3 of the big junglers that are still kind of out there, and not to even mention all of the different mid laners that are available to both of these teams still.
Yeah, mid lane, I think, is going to be more eclectic and open for both squads, so we could see Van go towards something like a Zhong Kui, right? Like, he's got a god pool that is very unique to him, whereas Big Man Tings on the other side is also similarly got a very unique god pool, but all that analysis goes out the window when you go towards the age-old standard Zeus immediately. The Olympus Bolts lock that one in for themselves, and it doesn't reveal too much about your draft. Zeus is generally going to be very plug-and-play in that he clears waves very well. He's got very good presence in the team fight. The only thing that you have to think about when you have a Zeus on your team is that he is not the most survivable mage. He does not have any traditional mobility abilities, so you might want to draft a little bit more peel just to build it around him.
He's going to need a lot of peel going up against what the Kings have drafted in their first 2 slots. Fafnir and Erlong Shen are going to be the first 2 gods in. And Fafnir has been on the rise as far as SPL bans and picks are concerned. We saw a lot of priority towards taking this god away yesterday in our 2 sets. And now we're seeing a first pick on this side of the Kings. The Olympus Bolts were responding kind with a warrior of their own, Gilgamesh, now locked in for the Bolts.
Yeah, I like what the Kings have done already. Fafnir and Erlong Shen. Erlong Shen, again, a plug-and-play pick that's going to give you a lot of pressure. We could say it's got some flex potential, but I think it is likely slated for Captain Twig in the jungle. But it is an auto-attacker. And in taking Fafnir for yourself this early, it doesn't leave that available to the Bolts. And now you can draft at least a Hunter, and you're already getting the value from Coerce. So, love in the top 2 for the Camelot Kings. On the other end, though, Gilgamesh going to help out with some of that peel potential I was talking about built around this Zeus, as will Yamoja, an incredibly strong pick that has good laning phase, decent ability to match some of the clear of some of the best Guardians at dealing damage to the wave, but also matching that with some sustain in the lane, as well as the ability to spawn up some massive walls. Walls have inherently taken a nerf here in Season 9, as Shell now has a Phantom option on it, so you get the benefit of an HP shield and the ability to walk through walls going forward, meaning that we could see the Camelot Kings pigeonholed into a situation where they have to go to 1 or maybe even 2 shells to match up this Yamoja's pressure.
Tiamat will be the final pickup by the Kings before we jump into the bans. And I mean, what a point in the season we're already at where Nox, Horus, and Khepri are the bans, and Yamoja is still a top pick immediately right after that one on the side of the Bolts. But as the bans start coming back through, the Kings are going to take away Cabrakan, who's been really rising up in the ranks towards that jungle, towards that solo lane even, as we saw out of Yarkor earlier on in the week. So we'll have to see exactly where the Kings remain with their draft. They still need their Hunter, likely still need their solo laner as well with this Erlong Shen. Meanwhile, the Bolts also are going to need their carry, so for the time being, Bolts are going to hold on to their first ban in this phase.
Yeah, I am curious about this Gilgamesh. It does have some flex potential, could potentially go to solo lane, could potentially go to the jungle. I would prefer likely to see it in the jungle in the hands of Lasbra, because the alternatives that we've seen are like Habwa and Poseidon. Habwa would be fine, Poseidon not so much. So Gilgamesh for them could be good, but I think the Kings are essentially saying with this Cabrakan ban that they are hedging their bets that it is likely going to be Gilgamesh in the solo, because when I think of Cabrakan and the Olympus Bolts together, that screams to me a Lasbra pick.
Well, it will be a Cerberus ban for the Olympus Bolts, taking some shots there towards the solo lane at the very least. Camelot Kings and the Bolts both with one more ban to go each, and still holding on to figuring out exactly where they want to target out here. Could still be trying to throw some targets at Lasbra to maybe ensure that this Gilgamesh goes that way. And for now, it'll be a Medusa who's somehow snaked her way all the way into a fifth ban on the side of the Camelot Kings, considering in almost every other set prior to this, Medusa has been a top 2 god.
She has been. A lot of priority so far towards these frontliners for both of these teams, and there are still some Hunters available. I'm surprised that it is Medusa banned out. Barracuda obviously very capable of going towards that pick, but it's not one that I think he loves going towards. Could be a situation where we see the Scotty locked in for him because the CC potential of the Camelot Kings already is relatively low. Single target from the Fafnir, Erlong Shen with the 9 turns blessing, and Tiamat with the stun in the bipedal stance. Very difficult to land on some of these backliners. So Scotty has some potential here in the draft. It's going to be an Osiris to finish out the Bolts banning phase. Both teams just trying to lock down exactly what it is that they want. But somehow, Artio makes it this far into the draft. Should be the solo laner for the Camelot Kings. And I've said it a lot. I'm going to continue to say it. Not a single matchup I can think of where Artio is uncomfortable.
No, I mean, with the amount of CC that she holds, the way that the items have really shifted towards her favor here, I'm honestly surprised that Artio made it as a 7th pick out here, considering she's been top 3 ban or literal first pick pretty much all of yesterday as far as the SPL is concerned. SCC even, we've been seeing a lot of priority towards her. Now the option goes back to the Bolts, and both these teams have been taking the max time possible to really go through. You can really see that the gears are turning in each of their heads trying to figure out what they want to do in this first game, because this first game is a big pivot point to the remainder of this set.
Well, I'm a huge proponent of first game mattering the most because you want to get a fast start. But this set, holistically for Phase 1, has a lot of implications for seeding. You got to remember that the Camelot Kings and the Olympus Bolts were pretty close to each other in power level throughout the entirety of Season 8. So you want to find a win here. You know, you gotta get your guarantees, but more specifically, you got to get the ones that are a toss-up, which is why we're seeing both these teams take so much time trying to figure out exactly what it is that is going to give them the most competitive edge going forward.
It'd be Chalk and a Muzen Cobb, the final 2 pickups for the Bolts here. Chalk, we've seen a little bit of jungle, but most likely slotting himself now over towards that solo lane. So for Lasbra, the Gilgamesh as the highly eclectic option here. Would you rather the Gilgamesh still go that way, or do you think Lasber going to the Chalk would be an option the Bolts could take here?
I think it's more so which one of those two is going to be more comfortable against Artio. And between the two, I'd say Chalk has a better chance of at least sustaining in the lane and making sure that it remains a stalemate, whereas Artio has a little bit more kill pressure up against Gilgamesh. So that's the long answer. Short answer, I'd prefer Gilgamesh in the jungle, but that's almost always.
You know what, that's fair. I remember this was months ago. I asked you the question, and then you responded back to me. Anytime it's ever a question of Gilgamesh jungle or solo, you want to see him in the jungle.
That's
so
right. We'll
continue to reprise that here. Cernanos, though, the final pickup for the Camelot Kings. We saw Netroid take this god yesterday, and it's a god that's been rising in favoritism. If Medusa has been taken off the table, a lot of teams have been going to this god as their second pick.
Yeah, Cern is very versatile in that he is a beads burning hunter. There aren't a lot in the game that are going to consistently burn beads in a team fight, but his ultimate is so good at that. And looking at the rest of the Camelot Kings draft, the only other consistent AoE beads burner is likely going to be the Erlang Shen. Sure, Artio can do it when she's diving, but it's generally going to be focused on like one or maybe two people at most. This is a composition now, top to bottom, where the Kings are going to be putting constant threat on the defensive relics of the Olympus Bolts. Whereas on the other side, the Bolts have got good tools for it, but assuming that this Chalk is going to the soul lane, going to be a little while till he's doing it consistently for his squad. Gilgamesh going to be generally single target in his beads burning capacity. Even Yamoja, to a certain extent, has the cooldowns up constantly, but still is generally only connecting with one. So the Bolts going to have to work a little bit harder to remove those relics, which means that they're going to have to work a little bit harder to find picks.
When talking to Genetics in the pregame interview, you know, when we had that one-on-one with him, one of the things that he mentioned was, we're going to play this map slow. We're going to force the Bolts to make mistakes. We're going to dig them all the way to this late game. Is this a composition out of the Kings that has the advantage when it comes to the late game, though, Mifflin?
Their late game is incredibly strong. Specifically, the Artio is going to do a good deal of limiting onto the Zeus. It's going to make it a lot harder for Zeus to find a lot of value in some of these team fights. But I wouldn't say that the Kings blow the Bolts out of the water with their composition come the 40-minute mark, right? I would say if this is a dead even match played in a void, 40 minutes in, even golden experience, I might give like 6.5 to 3.5 odds to the Kings.
Slotting it for a 40-minute one out here, Mifflin.
Well, I said, you know, that's an if statement.
If statement. Though if history does repeat itself with these two teams, especially with the Bolts, 40 minutes could be a very high possibility. We saw some very long games out of the Bolts yesterday. We saw some long and shorter games out of the Kings in their matchup versus the Leviathans. But here in this first game between these two teams, every single one of these games matters because you're only going to face them one time here in phase number 1 before we start going to that seeding. So who's going to take the first notch here in this set between the Olympus Bolts and the Camelot Kings? We'll throw it over to Gormizer and Trelly Relly to bring us game 1.
That's right, it's me, it's Trelly, and it's the match of the week, the Kings and the Bolts. And yesterday, Trelly, after watching what these two teams had to offer, it's got some interesting questions for me. And the weirdest one that's on the tip of my tongue is the fact that we did see a Runeforged Hammer built for an Amazon comp. Like, part of me wants to ask you about that, but maybe that can wait to see if Barra even builds it up. The Kings look really good against the Leviathans, though. You get Jake on this Yamoja, which was something that at first wasn't that great for him last year, and he kind of grew into it. It just feels like there's so much, but, you know, the talk was Lasbra and Genetics here. And do you think Lasbra, specifically on this Gilgamesh, is going to be an impact player this time?
I mean, this is the style of play that we love to see from Lasbra. Me specifically, I have been harping on it a lot. I like to see him on these assassins, these warriors, these characters that can get in very early and do, you know, all sorts of damage. Look for those ganks, that sort of thing. The Hebo was a little bit like that, but the Poseidon was not hitting for me. And then he whips out this Camelot, and finally we get to see that gank style of play, and he just popped off. That was last game, obviously. This time around, the Gilgamesh, that's the, it's scratching that itch for me. This is the style of character that I love to see Lasbra on.
Definitely it fits him better than the Poseidon. Just in general, blanket statement, I think works out well here. I'm curious how this dual lane's going to go already. Jake's getting kind of low. Good body blocks from Genetics just to make sure he stays in the fight a little bit longer. Netroid wraps around. He's going for a little bit more. Good stun from Genetics, and they're going to be looking for first blood. One more hit is all it takes. And Netroid's going to pick that up sub 1 minute in the game. Barra trying to help out, but there's only so much you can do as a carry.
It's so difficult in this duo lane to balance that, you know, that sort of seesaw where they're going to hit level 2, or we can hit level 2, now we're level 1, I have to back up because they have 2 abilities and I only have 1, that sort of thing. And it just seems like You've been playing the game for this long. How are you going to step up that far in your Mojo? It might have just been like 1 or 2 minions before you tick over to level 2 at that point. So a little bit unfortunate for Jake. Going to have to go back to base at this point. Still level 1. And that's going to be very difficult. But of course, Barracuda on this AMC, a lot of range on this character, can clear the way from quite far away. So still should be fine in that regard.
And like downsides for Jake, actually, it might be a little bit more. Where are you going? The stun going to be just off the mark there from Genetics. Whew, and Jake, that Riptide is going to be enough to get him out of there. But he has to play this incredibly carefully. Genetics is out for blood right now. I was going to say downside for Jake is less farm, but that benefits Barra, right? More farm, theoretically. They're going to try to get him up to level 3 as quickly as possible. Netroid, meanwhile, first blood bounty plus all of this going his way. I mean, this is a very comfortable lane for the Kings already.
I would say so. And looking at Barracuda's build, pretty much all week, we've seen him play how many games now? And every single one has been this sort of ability-based power red items hunter. He hasn't been going this sort of like attack speed, no Aussies, nothing like that. I mean, he even went on Cupid, the same style of build. So it looks like the AMC might be going towards that Bluestone, Transcendence, Crusher, just full red items, Heartseeker style play.
Barra stunned out. Beads already get used. Netroid, though, peeled away thanks to Jake, so the aggression kind of falls back on the Kings. Jake is still playing with fire, though. Stun's going to be good. And this is exactly how this dynamic works, right? I mean, you've got 2 stuns, 1 AoE, 1 single target. Genetics can just kind of dictate a single player to end up falling down, but a good play from Jake's might open up more. They're going to get aggressive. Vin's making a rotation over to the duo lane, though. Honey gets dropped. Jake trades his life out for this, but Vin is going to try to go big. Great leap from Genetics, covers enough ground to get him out of there, but some pathing might change that. Goes over towards the Harpy. Vin, Barra keeping their eyes on him. They even have backup if they need it. They don't. They're going to be able to get the kill on Genetics. So it's 2 for Jake and now 1 on the King support.
Yeah, it really seems like Genetics is getting a lot of value out of this horrific emblem. Was able to first blood Jake with it, wait for that purple buff spawn, and once again, catching that Yamoja with the slow is going to be devastating. So hammer into horrific emblem is going to spell the end for Jake twice. This time, though, Ven is going to make that rotation over and help his squad. Barracuda credit with the kill, so that's going to help out this AMC a little bit in that lane. After your support has died twice and Netroid gets the last hit both times, you're going to want some of that return gold.
Yeah, and at least getting something, right? Jake is kind of in that weird balancing point. Actually, he's level 3 to 3. He definitely has to be behind Genetics at this point, but he's doing well enough that he's not really out of this game. Meanwhile, you're starting to look at some of these other lanes. Vin just now hits level 5, going to have that Lightning Storm. Teams is level 6 with Lasber joining. Blink available. He does have dropkick. This could be something big. Great Riptide. Good dropkick, and they're looking for more, but the leap from Genetics gets him out of there. Another good Riptide from Jake. It didn't seem like anybody thought he was going to connect with it. They chase in. Lasbra jumps to chase forward. The Lightning Storm gets dropped. Twig tries to separate it. Vin gets rid of Genetics, and that might be the stopping point for the Kings. No, they're going to keep fighting. Lasbra knocked up, taken down by big man Tings, and they go 1 for 1.
Look at the build path that Captain Twig opted to go. He already has Mana Conceptor and Stone Cutting. That's just so much damage there. It really seemed, as you said, like no one thought Jake had that Riptide, so they just couldn't aggress there. But clutch play, and they were able to pick up Genetics at least, but I feel like they could have gotten that a lot cleaner if they just committed and trusted their support to hit that. But now, Captain Twig's not done. He's looking over, but this AMC's not coming out of tower. You're going to have to go back to base.
I'm still impressed just because both of these teams played so much slower, more methodical, not really wanting to fight yesterday. And there's 5 kills in 5 minutes already. They've completely changed the script from what they had done yesterday, which, again, keeps things fresh and interesting. And a lot of it has been duo lane oriented. Netroid with 2 kills versus the one on Barra. Getting a nice trade. I would hope you feel that way, at least in mid lane. But, you know, losing Lasbra versus losing Genetics for a second time definitely hurts the Bolts, I think, a little bit more. Genetics more than happy to fall on that sword as many times as necessary.
Yeah, we saw yesterday specifically Genetics trying to go for these obelisks, get these invades, try to get the offerings as quickly as possible. This time around, going to go for the purple buff, and it seems like no one's going to rotate.
God!
Twig just gets deleted.
I don't know where his health bar went. Lasbra, you got to be careful here, but it doesn't seem like it's going to matter. That was some ridiculous damage. Barra getting chased down. There's a little bit of CC. Good beads. Manages to immune out quite a few things there, but most notably the polymorph stinger.
You go pick it up.
Yeah, if you pick it up, it's a lower cooldown. He's going to just leave it.
Whenever I play AMC, I will die for that stinger. as Genetics uses everything to try to get that purple buff and is going to go for that, I will die for the stinger. That cooldown is just so important to me. I just like it, but didn't even end up getting the purple buff. And obviously, look at that obelisk, not quite full yet. So I would not be surprised if we saw the Fafnir rotate back again, trying to steal some of those offerings. And it looks like that is where Genetics might be heading right now.
Well, it's either the offerings or the mid camp. It's going to spawn up. Those are going to spawn some offerings there. Twig's already on him. And it seems like Genetics, yeah, just going to play bodyguard. That should spawn it for him, so a nice little bit of gold for him. That's going to reset those camps. I immediately look, Genetics beelines to the obelisk. He's like, I'm getting my scepter, man, and no one's going to take it from me. So that's going to be full uptime on that as well, which I believe 4 minutes. That's going to be running around.
And we see Barracuda's beads are down, so I think I know what Genetics might be trying to do with that.
He's got his eyes already set.
Yeah, he's going to say, I'm going to wait, again, buy that purple buff right when it spawns, go into the dragon, go for a horrific, and I already have so much damage now with this Indra Scepter. Barracuda probably going to have to play very carefully around that purple buff. Already 2 sets of wards near it, so they have the vision. And I think, you know, waiting on that beads timer is going to be a pretty solid play.
Now, this is a lot of what we expected when we came into Season 9. There was a lot of talk about the duo lane and, like, the pressure specifically around the obelisk. They've even been nerfed slightly since then, but we've still seen a lot of that here in the SBL. A lot of yesterday was played around those obelisks. You might have to... No, never mind. Well, maybe hold that thought. There's going to be great walls from Drake. A good Riptide and good lock-in, but instead of being able to lock down Netroid the way they thought, they're pushed away. Good ult from Netroid. Helps peel for himself and creates that space. But this is almost obscene duo lane pressure from both sides. I mean, they are absolutely focused on this aggression, and they're going to be looking for a little bit more. Twig rotates over. Doesn't seem like he's going to find anything.
Yeah, that was a really clutch ult by Netroid, making sure that, I mean, obviously we know that Bear's beats are down, but look at this. Genetic says, I have the coerce. We can try to 50-50 this, but this is not an unknown Gold Fury pull. Everyone's coming.
Well, they have 4 members of the Kings here. Twig goes forward, the taunt just shy. Good pin, but there's a Riptide waiting for Jake. Either way, that does buy some space. Felt like maybe that could have been the time to go aggressive onto the Gold Fury. 8 minutes is the earliest we would have seen it this year. It's going to be the Bolts now starting to lead the way. Stinger dropped onto Genetics, and there's so many slows and so much damage. They're going to get the kill, and Barra picks up the Stinger this time. And with the positioning of the Bolts, they might fall back to the Gold Fury.
I mean, look where BMT is. He's just been pushing the wave. He has no need to rotate over. Level 11 on this team, but now he might be trying to go for a little bit of poke here on these mid camps, but I think Jake is just going to Riptide away.
I was wondering if Jake was going to either Riptide him in or Riptide himself out. So far, that seems to be the case, but Tings, he's going deep. There's a pin, there's a lockdown. Riptide gets him under the tier 2. Lightning Storm drop, but it's not enough for Vin. Haddix has rotated into the mid lane, and there's going to be a wide silence alongside Lasbra. They're chasing down Twig, they're chasing down Tings, and looking for some more kills. They're going to find at least one of them, and it's a double kill for the solo laner on the Bolts.
That's a huge rotation by Haddix, obviously. Variety does come in underneath, go for that tower, and then, you know, make sure to get the kill onto Ven. You're 2-0 Zeus. That's a huge shutdown. But of course, once that shot comes in, Runeforge Hammer, that's going to be a ton of damage. Just great play by both of the Warriors on the Olympus Bolts to make sure to clean that one up.
Now, the pressure, the gold lead that was there for the Kings, it was, you know, approaching that 2K mark, kind of in control, cut in half by the Bolts. Same thing, the experience essentially brought right back into even territory. It's a big play from Haddix. We hadn't talked about the solo laners pretty much at all until that rotation. And it's wild, because Ardia went 7th overall. Like, she wasn't as high priority as we saw yesterday. So I expect a lot of things from Variety as this game continues to go, but that's a good showcase for what this Chalk can provide.
Yeah, Chalk just going to be able to clear the wave pretty effectively, especially with this Bluestone into Runeforge Hammer Star. You don't really have to brawl with the Ardia. You can just throw the axe from a distance and then run away, heal up and sustain yourself. So Ardio, usually this lane bully that's going to try to force you to get close and then, you know, cripple you out, stun you, those sort of things. But Chalk doesn't really have to worry about that. He can just stay under tower, get his farm effectively, and not really have to deal with all of that annoyance.
So we always talk a lot about the flat pin builds lately for the mid laners. And you know, Obsidian Shard's not an obscene item, and it's not like obscure. It gets picked up pretty often. I don't think I see it second that often. How do you feel about this for Tings?
Yeah, Tings has been going at second. I've seen it twice now. I think he only really values it when he's assuming that A, he's going to be getting dove by a bunch of tanky characters, right? Which you have a Lasbra on this Gilgamesh that likely will get the Shoguns. You have this Chalk, obviously, and then there's a chance that Venenu will itemize into a Void Stone. You know, a tanky use have a lot of tanky targets they're going to be having to go. So second item, Obsidian Shard, maybe not be the best early game, but just getting it online and making sure you have that percentage pen, you know, he values it.
Starting to strip it, like you said, through the tankier targets on the other side. He's not looking for the Barras. He's looking for the Lasbers that's jumping in his face. And unfortunately, as we just saw for him, the Haddixes that are kind of leading the way. If he can burn through them, it'll maybe make things a little bit quicker. A lot of aggression, though, still from the Kings. You know, despite the fact that last fight, maybe over-aggression from them, diving that tier 1, going maybe a little bit too deep in the mid lane, they're still looking at, you know, greater Scorpionings. They're still looking at trying to get a little invasive on the jungle from the Bolts here. Map state was the big conversation I think the desk had, and as Lasber I think had said, like the shot calls from Genetics and how they read the map is a huge deal for them. And it feels like they are trying to take advantage of pretty much any spot they can in the jungle.
Yeah, they're really trying to force everything they can at the moment, but it seems like right now the biggest threat on the map is Haddix coming in for that huge rotation, and it looks like we are seeing a massive Rivers of View catching out Variety here, and it looks like this RDO could be stuck.
Already locked down. I don't know if they needed as much to kill him as they dropped, but that's Winds of Shamash, that's Jake's ult, the Rivers Rebuke, and the Lightning Storm. Haddix goes for a wide stun, and now it's going to be Twig who looked to chase him down. Silence was golden on that one. Keeps him peeled just away. Jake might be caught out a little bit. Maybe not as caught out as Twig. Twig has to blink to disengage, but he's going to go back in. Taunt is good on the Haddix, and it feels like this one's going back and forth. If stun had connected from Jake, maybe they chase down Twig, but the heal from the 9 turns blessing is just enough to get them all out.
It almost looked like Barracuda was going to rotate over here. Maybe a Pyro fight was breaking out, but it seems like he's going to go back. Doesn't really want to make that trek all the way over, losing your tier 1 tower. Not going to be too worth it there, but now it seems like this Chalk is going to be going into Transcendence, so just more damage for Haddix right now, being able to output so much, just getting that stacked up. And on the other hand, we have another kill for Nenu, so this Zeus is going to be pumping out so much damage.
Yeah. And we've seen the Lightning Storm, again, kind of felt a little superfluous in the last fight, but it still got the damage done, which I guess is what Vin needs to be able to do here. And it's coming back off cooldown relatively soon, so it's not like it even matters for him. In the grand scheme, we'll get to see what exactly this Zeus has to offer. Like you said, 3-1-3. Just now is going to be finishing off, the Jade Emperor's Crown is what he opts to go into here. So a little bit of like tankiness, a little bit of staying power, and just a lot of power to pack that punch when he does do that detonate.
And it does look like he will be itemizing into either, you know, a Stone of Binding, which you can't really use, or that Void Stone that we've seen so much. Definitely going to be that Void Stone. So looking on this side, the other side of the map, BMT 2-0 on this Tiamat, and he has been consistently sending those lizards down mid lane. So not worried about the long cooldown of that ultimate, just not really rotating too much. Big Man Tings just wants to get his farm online. He's 2 levels up on the opposing mid laner. 2-0. I think he's sitting pretty in that mid lane.
He went to the Shinto school of farming right now, and he was keeping up. I think even outpacing Shinto a little bit yesterday. So maybe we're seeing a shift in dynamic in mid lane. Maybe Tings is the guy this year for all of their farming needs. We'll have to see. I mean, look, 2 levels up. He's absolutely, like you said, sitting comfortable, absolutely feeling fine in the mid lane. Bolts, this is a grouping that looks like it's going to be a Gold Fury, and they're throwing some damage towards it. Jake gets stunned out. Genetics is surrounded, but goes for the transformation. Immunity Frame is going to help him out there, and he's going to have a leap to disengage. Lightning Storm gets dropped, as well as Winds of Shamash. A lot of circles for the Bolts, and they're not going to have anything to show for it.
It really looked like their targets were a little bit split there. Jake was trying to pull in everyone but Genetics, and then Barra said, I'm going to stinger Genetics and try to focus down this Fafnir. So I think maybe if they just turned their attention towards the Fafnir and just tried to focus everything on him, or vice versa when Jake got the Rivers. But it seemed that they just wasted some ultimates for the Dragon transformation, and now the Camelot Kings do have a little bit of ults on the other hand, but they're not feeling too confident to pull anything at the moment. They're just going to go back, trying to keep farming as they have been. They still have the gold lead despite being down 3 kills.
Yeah, and it's been pressure from the Bolts that have slowly brought this back. And again, it was about 2,000 earlier. You could see that. What is that, 5 minutes ago, 7 minutes ago? But realistically, the Bolts have brought us close enough that we can call it even 14 minutes in. The experience, really the biggest deficit there is going to exist just in mid lane. Everybody else on the Bolts is pulling at least a slight lead. You can see it in solo. You can see it there for Barra. So they're feeling at least a little confident in their experience. And every time, now that I see that Lightning Storm coming back on cooldown, thought it was going to get punished a lot more after missing as much damage as it did. But that's a big objective shredder, right? It's not necessarily the best secure in the world. But when it comes down to burning Gold Furies, we've seen it a lot. And look at this. an ambush that seems like it's going to be all for naught from the Kings. They're going to try to make it happen anyway. They jump in onto Jake. There's a Riptide waiting to just transport him out of there. That's a not necessarily heavy commitment for the Kings, but still an active play.
Yeah, they're now, Captain Twig, no ultimate available. Umoja could just heal up if Jake wants to spam heals, but it looks like they're not even going to pull this Gold Fury. Nika, I mean, gosh, Variety. I look at Ardio and I just think Nika every time. Variety and Haddix both make the rotations over for this Gold Fury, but no one really feels confident enough to pull it, so it looks like they're just going to go back and start the farm game all over again. Neither of these solo laners did opt into this teleport, so they can't really get here quickly. They have to make the trek all the way over, and they just won't be starting it.
It's been 7 minutes since the Kings first went to pull this Gold Fury, and since then, nobody's wanted to touch it. Everybody's kind of hands off the Gold Fury. Maybe potentially already claimed by the Kings, just mentally. We'll see. Vision-wise, it at least is going to be claimed by them. A good sentry ward sitting by Genetics. So it'll be the Pyromancer that started up over here. If it's the minute this gets finished, it should be the go button for the Bolts. They've already picked up a little bit of the Gold Fury. Barra half health. They're trying to trade that one around. There should be a Pyromancer for free for the Kings, although we're going to have to see. Okay, they do get it. Lasber tried to change that. Bolts get the Gold Fury, so they go tradesies on the objectives.
Yep, and Lasber obviously just trying to get a little bit of aggression over here. Captain Twig tanking up that Pyromancer.
He's still going.
Lasber has the HP bars here for sure, but I don't think he's really going to be able to kill anyone else unless Twig steps up. So it does look like the Bolts are going to put their aggression towards this mid lane tower as Genetics jumps in.
Oh, that's going to be a missed stinger from Barra. Genetics just out of range from that one. Tier 1 tower still goes down, so they get a little more gold going their way. And that brings it to, within the hundreds to 200s range, so not too worried about it. Lasber is still beating on Variety, impressed to see the commitment from him, and he's starting to win this trade. And now with Haddix coming over, the silence is going to be good, but not better than the beads. The damage, though, it's still there, and Haddix gets his third.
Now we have a 3-0 Chalk, level 17 on the map that has so much damage built in. This Runeforge Hammer, this Transcendence, and now the Kadusha Shield. So anytime this Chalk is near your carries, it's going to be rough. Obviously, Ven went for this sort of hybrid build where he's got Jade Amp and Voidstone, but BMT, full damage. Obviously, we're seeing the Soul Gem pickup that I love to see. I've been harping on it a little bit. When we have these lower cooldown mages, you love to see just a little bit, just 20% right now with the Sands of Time into the Soul Gem. So it's going to be very impactful just for a little bit of sustain for this Tiamat.
We'll get to look back, specifically the Haddix perspective of this. And this is good on Lasber, because Lasber had been chasing Variety for since to the Pyromancer. He's been chasing him for 30 full seconds, and it wasn't until that rotation from Haddix. I don't think that even happens unless you get to see Haddix make that rotation come in. So Variety, I think, showcasing how much staying power an Ardio can have in a one-on-one, all of the CC she brought. But as you mentioned, Haddix just kind of saying, okay, cool, I hurt, though.
Yep. I mean, that's the difference between these two builds, right? Obviously, Variety going for the hardcore phys defense start, the Legion Helmet and Breastplate. Then the Oni Hunter's Garb, not wanting to itemize into that Genjis that we've seen, no sort of Shoguns, not too many. You already have it on your Fafnir, so you don't really need to get double, because you don't really get this. You don't get the second amount of attack speed. It only doesn't stack. So very tanky, but on the other hand, if you're going to sit there and just eat Gilgamesh autos for a full minute, obviously when Chalk rotates over, it's gonna be deadly.
Eventually things are gonna fall apart. You mentioned the Shoguns there for Genetics. Beneficial for Twig and Netroid. Picked up just straight up by Lasber. He just wants to hit faster. It's gonna help out Vin, Barra himself, and maybe even to a certain extent Haddix. Speaking of Haddix, I thought there was gonna be a little bit more going on over here. He started out some damage and some fight. He's got Jake around them. All the neutral objectives on the map have been burned, save for the Fire Giant. It seems like the Bolts are starting to play around that knowledge. Gone are the days of seeing 4 people just roaming around in the left side jungle. And instead, it's a lot of pressure from the Bolts. You can see the wards starting to come out relatively deep on the King side of the jungle to get some vision. They're going to keep it pretty calm at this point. And this is where things get awkward. You've lost the tier 1 in both mid and solo if you're the Kings. And that feels like just a little more pressure that the Bolts get on the map.
Yeah, you don't really have anything to sit under at that point, obviously. Variety going to be posturing more towards the tier 2 tower. 'Cause
Yeah,
you have
you gotta play safe.
Yeah, you have no sort of extra help in that regard. But looking at these builds once again, Barracuda going for the third item, Titan's Bane. He has so much ability penetration with the Stinger as well. Any sort of tank that gets near this AMC right now is going to get absolutely shredded. He doesn't have as many, auto attacks. Doesn't have that much attack speed, just the passive from the Hive. But besides that, if you get anyone who gets Stingered right now is going to be the target, and they need to burn them down quickly.
It's got just the right cooldown on it, that if you can hit them with the Stinger, pick up the Stinger, and then wait, 8 more seconds? You could probably do it again and hit that combo. We'll see whether or not Barrett's going to be able to make something like that happen. He has made the trek over here, although he's a little bit late to the party compared to the rest of the Kings and Bolts. But he's going to join it full 5-on-5 around the Fire Giant pit. It seems like the Kings don't want to take the fight as readily as they would have a little bit ago. And we're starting to see it. I mean, small shifts, little invades, little camp steals. But after all that has happened, the Bolts did get themselves up to about 1,000. Not even maintaining the full 1,000, but around 1,000 gold lead. And at 20 minutes, 21 minutes, that doesn't really separate these two teams that much.
Yeah, at this point, you're pretty much just looking at that XP difference, which
Oh, and there goes the tower.
Yeah, the first tower of the match, obviously for the Camelot Kings. So just making sure to take that one down, get a little bit of extra gold finally. But looking at these builds again, BMT has ticked over to level 20. Finally, an upgraded starter, right? But on the flip side, Ven, still a level behind. He was just 18, so that's going to be a big power spike for the Camelot Kings. This Tiamat, still 2-0, has a lot of damage built in. An alternate timeline, perhaps, or, whichever one, obviously, Big Man Ting wants to go, it's going to make it even more annoying to try to kill this Tiamat, which they haven't been able to do yet in this game.
And that makes it, even more interesting. We might have to hold that as Haddix trying to lead the way. The Kings go on him. He decides to try and fight anyway. Takes a lot of damage here. Jake going for the healing, but it's not going to be enough. There is an Ankh online for Genetics, and they're going to continue this chase. Haddix still have health. It looks like he's going to be able to get out of this one, but it is going to cost him something. That Pyromancer getting burned down. The Kings are going to be able to secure that one. But going back to the mid laners, especially when we start talking about it, Kings hasn't upgraded just yet. Guys, you got to give me a second. Okay, good. And so that's something to talk about. But when we see Vin hit 20, he's going to have a power spike specifically in the jungle. Fights like this are going to be his bread and butter.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult to kill a Zeus right now with Protector of the Jungle around the Fire Giant. Just looking at how he's itemized right now. Obviously, trying to go into what I'm assuming is going to be that Obsidian Shard. That's going to be a huge power spike in its own right. But when you're at this level 19 threshold, he is just going to buy the Obsidian Shard outright. But some people like to hold their gold until they tick over to 20, get that upgraded starter immediately. But I think Ven is smart to say, hey, I need some percentage, Pam, because we have some tanky targets on the other side of the map. Obviously, Oni Hunter's Garb for variety is going to make him extremely tanky. That's just a one magical defense item, but it's going to give you all the survivability you really need.
Well, Primal Fury started up by the Kings. Jake's here. Yeah, no, not going to be able to steal that one away. So the last two neutral objectives go the way of the Kings. They get the Pyro and the Primal. And now they've brought themselves back up about 1,700 gold. They're going to continue in their favor. And that is, they're building the roller coaster that is going to be the charts for this one. You can see it reflected in the experience, although starting to matter a little bit less. You had mentioned Ting's hitting 20. Vin just now hits 20. Both the carries are 20. So everyone's starting to catch up in regards to that experience. Soon enough, not going to be the big deal. It will be all around that gold counter. And since they took the other neutral objectives, we're right back to square one, where this Fire Giant is the point of intrigue. It is where everybody wants to be. And I have to ask you about it, because we've seen Zeus ults dropped strictly for burn. But it feels like this is a huge 50-50. Even if you think you can burn it faster than the Kings can get there, you don't have the secure.
Yeah, there's not a huge massive confirmed tool on the map right now. The best I would see right now is a 3-charge detonate from Venenu.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you're getting hardcore CC'd by maybe an Erlong Shin, for example, it's going to be very difficult to time that. But another thing, yesterday, when the Bolts were in these long games, that man ended up tweeting, hey, the reason this is taking so long is because Barracuda's items. He doesn't have crit. You can't do Fire Giant that quickly with this build. And that's going to come back to bite them here. They might want to try to push the small lead they had, but because of Barracuda's itemization, lots of ability damage, not so much shred, they really can't do this Fire Giant.
And maybe trying to get aggressive. Good Riptide pulls Tings in. Jake's not going to be able to lock anybody down. And Jake might be the other crucial key to this giant piece, right? You mentioned how, Barra himself maybe not going to be able to do a lot. But you throw up like what, River's Rebuke walls to the sides, then drop the Lightning Storm. Just you're either jumping in here blind or we're killing the Fire Giant. Still a little risky. 24 minutes in, maybe you want to kill or two to try and cement that for your favor. But at this point, the teams, it's fun to watch this ebb and flow, and specifically like the positioning of them. You can see Lazara still looking, if the Kings get aggressive, how do I get to the back line? Haddox, Jake still looking for who can they lock down. It's going to be Tings, and they go in. The Silence not going to be able to connect fully this time around, and there's a great River's Rebuke to hold Tings into this Genetics transforming, but it's the mid laner on the Kings that goes down first. Vera in a little bit of trouble, but this damage was made for killing tanks, and he's doing his best to stay alive, and his team's trying to help him. Genetics does get the kill, but it costs him his life, and it might cost Twig the same.
It really looks like Jake just going for the go button, trying to get all of these Riptides to cut out Tings, and now it's looking like trying to catch out Twig, but it looks like they are just going to back off, heading back to this Fire Giant. You have a 4v3 situation here. Again, your ADC is gone, so you've lost a big percentage of your burn, but it looks like Netroid is just going to try to face check this one as Twig wraps around.
3K lead right now for the Kings. Netroid, he's here. He's ready to fight. He's got to play it carefully. But you had called it. Twig did not go back to base. Is going to be waiting to see if he can help him out. No way are you helping that Venenu, as well as the rest of the bolts just surround and swarm up to Netroid. Nothing he can offer for it. Variety Twig here. Genetics is respawn. Ting still waiting in the grayscale. Is that going to make the big difference? This is where that secure conversation comes right back into it. Fire Giant, half health. 3 charges sitting on there from Vin. Variety playing bully. Twig watching as it goes on. This is a slow FG for the Bolts, and Vin, he's taking too much damage. They're going to turn. They're going to try to swarm onto this Artio, and they're going to have just enough damage. It's going to take them a little while. No, Variety just dashes away. Comes in, disrupts, stops the FG, and forces the Bolts to fall back.
I mean, they just cannot do the Fire Giant quick enough. They just don't have that much damage built. Obviously, when you're going for these sort of hybrid builds, it just takes a little bit to burn, and with your ADC down, even with the numbers advantage, it's just very difficult to try to shred this FG down. I would not be surprised if it takes until Enhanced Fire Giant before one of these teams is really able to confidently pull the Fire Giant. And now Pyromancer's up. We might see a little dance over that, but neither one of these teams, even with a numbers advantage, is going to feel confident. Obviously, Netroid has the Executioner. He's got Odysseus Bow. Yeah, he's going to be shredding it a lot quicker, but you need that sort of numbers advantage first before you even attempt that.
Now, positioning. At this point, maybe the most important it's been in the entire game. I lost a lot of hope for the Bolts getting an FG without a full wipe off of that last one. There's a good River's Rebuke. Haddox blinks forward onto Twig. Genetics separated from his team. That is going to be a long cooldown, 140 seconds, that Jake is not going to be able to utilize that ultimate. Twig's looking for a cut off or some aggression. They've got a hefty wave in mid. They might be able to get a tier 2.
They have the Tiamat Lizards pushing mid. Obviously, Twig feels pretty confident just going in here as a Wing Blade proc if he needs to escape. But now he's just going to run away as the Lizards are going to hit that. Obviously, big ults down, and they're going to aggress.
Yeah, with Twig out of the picture right now, you can try to get aggressive. Jake polymorphed, Riptide's out of there, and Genetics pulled and isolated. Not enough. Lasbra just loops around, does get a 1-for-1 himself for Netroid, but Jake might go down, swinging in favor of the Kings. Haddox, Vin, Bera, standing as a 3-man group and trying to figure out what they can do here. Good knock-up from Twig. The pause comes through from Genetics. The chase seems to be on right now, though, Trelly, and this is where things get really awkward if you're the Bolts. You have decent damage, not a lot of tankiness left.
What's the over-under that you think Ven's going to live this knockup?
Yeah, that's the fun play. Pause the fight. How well does he live through here? Not likely.
Yeah, I
don't know the numbers, but it's not good.
I don't think the Zeus is going to be able to live through this one. Obviously, that's all started because the Bolts sort of got split up. The Tiamat Lizards were pushing down mid lane.
Yeah.
Twig says, I'm going to go get that free tier 2. And then Last was like, hey, I don't want you to get that free tier 2. So as he goes over, the Kings are like, wait, they're split up. And then they just go in. Obviously, Jake gets caught out. Genetics is able to jump away with this draconic transformation. And then at that point, where's all your targets are gone.
And I honestly thought it was going to be the opposite, right?
Yeah.
Because when you watch, Lasbra comes back to the fight from the tier 2 short path. Twig goes around the walls, like has to take this long trip. And I'm thinking, oh man, Lasbra's going to get something done. And he does kill Netroid.
Right.
And then he's really deep all by himself. Jake really low already. It just feels like that was almost like pure setup for the Kings. Twig doing a great job distracting them and kind of pulling all of that attention away from the team fight, at least from the jungler. And the Kings were able to benefit from that. Now they're potentially going to benefit a lot more. I mean, you get a couple of kills here. We're, what, 30 minutes in? You might not even need the FG to win.
Yeah, at this point, you're going to be looking at Captain Twig's burn specifically because, again, Netroid is dead. You don't have the Cernanos burn if you want to go for either the Titan or the Fire Giant. Both are on the map at the moment. Both are going to be looked at here. But it really just depends. I think the Fire Giant probably the better option at the moment. Still a lot of towers up right now.
Oh, yeah, there are.
Yeah, the Camelot Kings have not really found that much aggression this game up until they found their first tower, and now the Tier 2 tower is getting a little bit weak.
It has all been over here. We thought that Zeus was going to be dead, but look at Vin. What? He is more than happy to survive through that engagement. At this point, though, you have to look towards relics, and specifically, there's a lot still up for the Kings, and not as many left for the Bolts. Although Vin maintains his beads, which is phenomenal.
I'm pretty sure he just dropped the Lightning Storm, and then everyone saw his build. They said, wait, this guy's got a lot of damage. Maybe
No.
Maybe we're all grouped up in this jungle in a small little corridor. Maybe we don't want to deal with Chain Lightning here. So it is still, now it's going to be a 4-for-4. But it looks like Lasbra and Netroid going to have the same respawn timer here, so we're back to the dance. And as I predicted, it might tick over to that enhanced Fire Giant at 30 minutes, and that's really, you don't want a 50-50 that one. You want to make sure you have confirmation.
Based on what we saw last time, the Bolts could have started the Fire Giant like now, and it still wouldn't be done until it wasn't just because of the damage output they had. There's a Primal Fury on the other side of the map. That's cool. Maybe something that somebody can get. The gold difference, again, at 29 minutes, anything essentially within the 2,000 to 3,000 range is completely negligible. So the Kings, a small lead, maybe transitions into some more vision, maybe slight upgrades where there otherwise wouldn't be, but not as much as we're used to seeing at this point in the game. Very back and forth between them. And based on what we saw yesterday, this is giving me, I think, a lot of promise for what we got to see out of the Warriors and showcasing, I think, a lot of what the Kings have to offer still. And we haven't even gotten through game number 1 yet.
Yeah.
The Primal Fury's waiting, Fire Giant dance. It's all up in the air, Charlie.
I was going to say, my eyes look to Jake right now. His Riptides have been on point. He was the one who caught Tings out and started that fight about 10 minutes ago. So it really is just going to be, can awesome Jake land another clutch Riptide? It seems like none of the carries want to even get in that position where they could get pulled back. Genetics and Variety posting up. They might get whooped a few times, but right now, I don't think anyone is going to be really wanting to step up to this Shimoda. You get put out of place one time, that could be the game.
And that's going to be a big deal. Haddix takes a lot of damage just trying to walk at the Kings, but they're going to go back in. Winds of Shamash do get dropped by Lasbra. Slows are going to be aplenty, and he's going on to Twig immediately, trying to peel for Barra. Barra uses the Aegis, uses the beads, and gets the peel that is necessary. Silence from Haddix, and the first kill goes to the Bolts. They are now 5v4, but the health bar is not enough for them to feel ready to surge forward. In fact, they're pulling back.
I actually love this play. They have the healing, they have the numbers advantage. Just back up, get healed by Yemoja, and then start your Fire Giant siege, waiting out the Draconic transformation as well. Fafnir without these dragon stuns, not as effective. Of course, you did just get BMT's double relics as well. It's going to be so difficult to step up to this enhanced Fire Giant now if you're the Camelot Kings.
You're going to have to figure out a way in here. We saw it earlier, though. The defense could have existed. Jake is just gone, though. 0-4-7 for the Yemoja. And unfortunately, that might strip away a lot of the potential that the Bolts had for any staying power. I mean, they had to back off the Fire Giant earlier in a 2v5, and so now in a 4v4, probably not feeling too confident. And so, Relly, we go ahead and just hit the reset button.
Yeah.
With Haddix, maybe stand a little too far forward for my comfort.
It still seems like the Olympus Bolts want to try to pull this Miser, and that seems to be. They finally have a numbers advantage. The Camelot Kings 5v4 as everyone rolls back up to this Fire Giant, and they are starting the pull. But the Olympus Bolts still showing some face here. They're not going to let this go for free, and they really do not want to let it go at all.
Yeah, FG going just as slow for the Kings as it was for the Bolts. They're not burning this down, but they're not trying to right now, as they are going to take the damage. It's sitting at 1/3 HP, still picked up and held onto. They're finally going to leash that one. Haddix goes deep, and he's looking for a little bit more genetics. Immunes that out. Twig gets taken down on the right-hand side, though. They might lose Lasbra. A good leap gets him out of there, and Rivers Rebuke is back, catches Netroid perfectly in the corner, but they're not able to chase him down. Lasbra has to be careful, and Haddix is picking up the slack. 5-0-5, and continuing the chase. The damage has been there for the Chalk. The Bolts get the Pyro, and they set themselves up to get aggressive on the fire.
It does look look like BMT is still going to be sticking around here, doesn't have beads available for 6 seconds, and the Bolts are just going to back off. They're still not pulling this Fire Giant. It looks like Lasbra has to go mid lane to defend the team at Lizards, but it's a 5v3. They have to feel confident enough to pull this now. Everyone backed.
Yeah, literally no one's here. Jake was standing up against 2. I was a little worried for him just because of what we've seen Tings do to health bars here. And then Jake had nothing going on for him. Haddock steps forward. Everyone on the Kings is gone right now. And the Fire Giant started up by the Bolts. And this time around, they've got the frenzy, they've got the damage, and they're burning this one. EFG on all 5 belts of the Bolts.
They finally hit the thing. I'm so happy. Obviously, they were just, not feeling too confident. It makes sense. This is the first game of the set. As Mifflin touched on the desk briefly, this is a very important one for your mental state. You don't want to be like, oh, we battled it out for 30 minutes and then we just took this huge hit. It could sway your whole mental for the rest of the game, obviously. So just making sure to wait until they had the clear numbers advantage of 5v3. The frenzy popped, making sure they had enough damage to really burn down that objective. And now, finally, these tier 2 towers are going to start to get looked at on the left side of the map, maybe even taking a Primal Fury, of course. Awesome Jake still has some items to be building here. Pretty much everyone else, they've spent all sorts of gold. They're looking at a 3K pot at this point in the game, but your support really could use a little bit more tank stats. As we saw, the Bolts probably could have pulled that a little bit earlier if Jake didn't just walk up and get shredded down. So needs a little bit more of that physical protection, specifically Netrioid was chunking him there. So once Jake ticks over to level 20, that's going to be very beneficial. But it looks like still the tier 2 towers are on the table.
Yeah, we saw that back. A lot of gold just from the tier 2. And I'm actually surprised to see this. A split push from the Kings. They're going to burn that right tier 2 pretty quickly. Shouldn't be as quickly as the Bolts tear down 2 tier 2s in the process. So you alleviate a little bit of that stress, and you open up another Phoenix win condition if you're the Kings here. There were a lot of Aegis of Judgments, a lot of Relic upgrades there for the Bolts. Haddock takes a lot of damage stepping up. And Variety's going to let that one fall down to the wayside. Left side Phoenix aggressed on by the Bolts. The damage is going to be there. And remember, no backdoor protections to worry about thanks to the EFG. They get the bird, and they're going to get Genetics on top of it. He goes for the transformation and has nowhere to go afterward.
Yeah, that enhanced Fire Giant buff is just going to be coming in so clutch here. At this point, Haddox could walk up and probably solo one of these Phoenixes here. So you have to really put all of your stock into defending as a unit. Right now, you're down your support. You do not have that much lockdown. That Fafnir hammer is no longer as Haddox walks up and tries to just tank some auto attacks, and the mid Phoenix is going to go down as well.
Yeah, and fast at that. 6-0 and 5, 6-1 and 7. Haddox and Vin getting a lot of the kills and a lot of the damage. Bara is top of the charts for the Bolts, but then immediately behind him are the solo laner and the mid laner. You know what? 3 for 3. They're going to take the right side Phoenix. Are the Bolts going to go for the end here? Genetics still gone for another 10 seconds. They have the EFG power play for another minute and a half, but it's so awkward. There's 4 people ready to fight you, and they're not going to give it up for free. You have to be careful. I mean, can you even go for this?
You have Lightning Storm. Your burn is going to be insane, and they are going to go for it.
Oh, yeah, there's the jump in, and there's the damn. Oh, my God, that Titan gets deleted before you can even register it. I think cautionary around the fight, maybe rightly so, but they didn't really need a lot of time to get that win.
Yeah, that's why we saw that dance around Enhanced Fire Giant take so long, because you can do that once you get the buff. The Enhanced Fire Giant, the strongest buff on the map that you can get. And obviously, just being able to 5v4 against the Titan with everyone there. And yes, I agree. Jake's Riptides were clutch all game. He was the reason they were able to set up so many different picks. They're obviously pretty stat lines for Haddox and Ven specifically. Those 6-1, 6-0 sort of things are going to look great, but those Riptides came in super clutch.
I like seeing the celebration. Immediately, Lasbra and Vin are up, and like cheers to be had. Shaking Jake. Haddox comes up and tries to do the same thing to Vin. Vin's just like, yeah, we know. like we already know. We've been there. The damage was good. The setup was good. The CC was good. A couple of falls around the Fire Giant for the 10-minute FG dance that happened there from like 20 to 30. But once that was done, the Bolts get it, and they get the win here. They're up 1-0. We're going to go into game number 2 and break this one down right after this.
The Heavenly Light update has arrived on the battleground and has brought along a ton of new content. First, we have the brand new Heavenly Light event, a massive event spanning 4 updates and providing cosmetics and quests for players to enjoy along the way. Players can also choose to buy all from the very first day to get all of the content available throughout the entire event, as well as the brand new Tier 5 skin Queen of Cards Izanami. This skin features a brand new minigame system that allows the skin to grow and change throughout the lifetime of you playing with it in any game, so make sure you check that out right away. We are also celebrating another birthday for Smite, and we have a free Smite birthday event to go along with it. Players can participate by logging into Smite each day during the 15-day event and playing games to earn free rewards that range from gems to in-game cosmetics made by your community artists. Make sure you log in and check it out every day, as you can only earn rewards on the day that they are active. Finally, we have a brand new battle pass, the Chibi Bots Battle Pass. If you like robots that are as adorable as they are dangerous, this is the battle pass for you. Progress through this pass to earn skins for Cupid, Thoth, Ymir, and Hades, alongside a huge variety of other prizes. Make sure to pick up the Chibi Bots Battle Pass today. You can find all of the amazing content mentioned and a whole lot more now live in Smite.
Charge the death ray! You don't have death rays? Well, charge your boots and swords then!
Lifeform scans indicate this world is rich with resources. Prepare all available units for interplanetary invasion!
Oh boy! My first time on the front lines! I wonder if I'll be any good at this whole fighting thing.
Enemy heat signatures detected within orbit. Commencing combat preparations.
It's over. Flee if you must. But the beast is already on your trail.
I dare say, what kind of mischief is there to be had today?
What hand will you play?
I was constructed and brought into his world to bring light and hope.
I will restore the light and bring justice to the people.
I'll be making the ground quake with my moves soon. You'll see.
With my boundless energy, I will experience all this reality has to offer.
Live for nothing or die for something. Your call.
Hello and welcome back into the SPL. Game number 1 goes the way of the Olympus Bolts after a near 40-minute game here that Mifflin had called out earlier on as we were coming into the desk. But to be expected, based off the way that the drafts had gone and how the game had kind of been playing itself out there, very slow pace, back and forth. One player gets caught out here, so now both teams have to kind of sit back a little bit longer. And that was kind of the name of the story all game. They didn't really have objective burn necessarily on either side. But when it came to actual team fights, damage galore out here, Mifflin.
Yeah, for me, it really felt like the Artio was struggling to close gap onto that Zeus. It was a conversation that I was having with the previous coach of the Jade Dragon. So you know it's good data. Every time the Artio was able to close gap, it wasn't like a coordinated dive from the Camelot Kings. So Artio gets back there, she buys a little bit of time, eventually dies, and you're thinking to yourself, well, she was alive for like 10, 15, 20 seconds. Maybe the rest of the team was able to do something, but the zone from the Olympus Bolts was incredibly strong. So it really was not a 1v2 in the back line for the Kings, and then the other 4 doing their own thing against 3. It was a 1v2 in the back line for the Kings with Jake saying, like, hey, don't step up. Don't make use of that time. And they didn't. And the Olympus Bolts were able to pseudo-control the majority of the team fights from that point onward. So Ven certainly one that needs to get a lot of respect for the set this time around, because this Zeus found a lot more value than I think I was expecting personally.
I mean, the damage output on Ven this game was absolutely atrocious. Not atrocious, like absurd is the one I was wanting to go with.
Yeah, atrocious is fine too.
Atrociously disgusting, maybe the way to go out here. I mean, even the build path that he went, still very more so what we're used to seeing out of some of these mages now, where you go for this kind of hybrid style of build early. He didn't go for the Celestial Legion helm like we were more accustomed to seeing. Instead, he went towards the Jade Emperor's crown, kind of that new rising up helmet that we would normally only see out of these solo lane guardians, maybe out of your support ones here. But Ven was able to put it to good use, living through a lot of damage throughout a lot of this onslaught in the fight, specifically from Variety, Origin X diving in there, and then being able to dish that damage right back out.
Yeah, another concern for the Camelot Kings is that, and it's something that happens with Erlong Shen. I'm not going to lie this at the feet of Twig, but and Erlong from behind really, really struggles to be that initiator. So when we were evaluating the drafts, in the initial P's and B's, it was, okay, well, the Kings have got a lot of really, really good tools. They're going to burn beads consistently. Just not the case, though. Every time the 9 turns blessing was used to initiate a fight, Twig was generally removed from the fight pretty quickly afterward. The Olympus Bolts seem to have had the answer to the strategy that the Kings were bringing. And again, go back to the interviews, it was the Kings saying, hey, we're going to slow down the pace of this game. We're going to drag them to a late-game team fight. The game nearly goes 40, but somehow the Bolts were the ones who had the superior team fight capacity.
6-1-7 slash line for Venenu, 6-0-5 for Haddix on this chalk. Really becoming that staunch front line with him and Awesome Jake. And Jake, on these ultimates specifically, I mean, obviously Riptides are always something to talk about with the Emoja, but these ults, you're talking about the need for things like Phantom Shell to have to be picked up to deal with these Emojis, but Jake was finding immense value from this ultimates in every single one of these late game team fights.
Specifically, one ultimate that I really liked from Jake was the Titan Siege. They walk in, they spawn some walls around the Titan, completely ignoring the Camelot Kings and said, hey, you should have been in these walls if you want the Titan to survive, because it died very quickly with nobody there to body block shots or nobody there to deal damage to the bolts. Jake just separates the fight incredibly well. And look, this is a different version of the bolts than what we saw up against the Oni Warriors. This was a much more concise strategy from them. The composition works incredibly well. The target selection was a lot better too. I'll be honest, I was shaky on the bolts after that set, but already in this performance up against the Kings has inspired a lot more confidence in me for them.
And as we jump into picks and bans for game number 2, Kepri and Daji will be the remaining bans that the Bolts are going to stick consistent with. The Kings will make sure to keep taking a shot over at Jake with that Nox. But after that Yemoja play, I would be surprised if Yemoja makes it past the banning phase. I was going to say makes it past, like, you know, top pick if it doesn't get banned out here, but it does get taken away alongside that Kleena here. Kings take that one off the board, and a Horus. So a lot of shots around the supports for these ones. But if it ain't broke, no need to fix it here. The Bolts are going to go right back to that Zeus.
But the Kings should have realized now what was going wrong around that Zeus and what they need to address to get into that back line, whether or not there are some pieces they can look towards to make it a little bit harder for this Zeus to find pressure. Medusa, just a standard pick, something you're going to take into the dual lane regardless because of what she's able to do as far as kill pressure is concerned. But even Petrify is a decent tool to make sure that Zeus has to be a little bit more cautious in some of these team fights. It's hard to, or it's pretty hard to lock eyes with Medusa all the time and realize when she starts channeling that ability and then stop locking eyes with her, you know. But now with a Gilgamesh as well, it's something that I think is really not talked about enough, but I like to call it visual noise in a team fight. When you have abilities that are conditional CC like Medusa's, where you need to be looking away to not get petrified, things that can make the battle just a little bit more messy, things that can make it a little bit harder to see are very useful, and Winds of Shamash is in that column. You spawn up a Winds of Shamash, you give me 10 tries, I'm probably getting petrified like 9 out of 10 times. That is how disruptive that ultimate is from Gilgamesh.
And that's why we see the Kings picking that up here second time around. Not going to go with the Erlong they did in game number 1. They'll take the Gilgamesh away from Lasper, away from the Bolts, and put that in their own pocket. A Muzenkov and Fafnir, though, so we are going to take a shot away from Genetics this time around. Awesome Jake going to be piloting the Dwarf Dragon Man himself. And this AMC backing over into the duo lane. And talking kind of about the Hunters, you know, we didn't really see crit coming from either of them, so their objective burn in that sense was definitely a lot lower. It wasn't until we started getting to these 30, 35-minute team fights, that's when we saw these full pen power items really start to come online for these gods.
And it's very good at dealing with tanks. It's very good at dealing with actual permanent structures, towers, phoenixes. That's where the pen build really flourishes. When you get to the Fire Giants and the Gold Furies, you probably want a little bit of crit so that you can burn them a lot more quickly, but doesn't seem to be the name of the game for these teams. It really doesn't come down to just, I'm going to race you to the Gold Fury, I'm going to race you to the Fire Giant. It really is at the highest level of play. You create scenarios where you can be left alone with an objective, and then it doesn't really matter how quickly you can do it, or you create scenarios where you just win team fights afterward. And it generally is the team fight that dictates the pace of the game.
And one of the things that was talked about in game number 1 was the more scrappy nature of the Bolts in their team fighting stages in the early games, how they are a team that really wants to come out and brawl. But in game number 1, the Kings are the ones who are trying to get a lot of these fights started up here. And then as we started petering towards the latter half of the game, that's when things started to kind of even themselves out here. But the Kings will round out their top 3 with a Bologna. So going to give that one over to Variety, throw him in the solo lane, get him off that RDO, and get this RDO out of the game as a whole. Banned away, first time here in Phase 2 of the bans.
Already a much more consistent backline dive from the Kings. Gilgamesh is a lot more easy to perform on. It doesn't fall as far behind, and even if you do fall behind on a Gilgamesh in the jungle, you still have Winds of Shamash so you can toss out from a range, drop kick, send a minion somebody's way that's still a stun, you know. So it's not as if you've got that full-on, I'm an auto-attack jungler, if I fall behind, I get bopped style. So I like Gilgamesh here as Atlas being hovered by the Camelot Kings. Very interesting pickup with the draft as it stands. We don't have an eyes on the mid laner for the Kings just yet, so we don't really know what the follow-up is exactly going to look like for them, but Petrify, Winds of Shamash, both good follow-up tools. I like what we see from the Kings. Already these adaptations to address the Zeus.
Yeah, new look out of Genetics, at least with this Atlas. Mostly been seeing it out of Aurora and Rongyu on the Titans and the Leviathans, respectively. So we'll kind of get a new first little look at this god, and we even saw Inbound Pilot at least one time here. So a new hand going to be holding out with this god. 2 more picks now over to the Olympus Bolts. They need their solo, they need their jungle, and a lot of options open here. This Daji has been a consistent ban out of the Bolts across the board in every one of their games that they have played up until this point. And at this point, Miv, I'm not sure if it's just something they don't want to deal with, or is Daji just really that darn good at this point?
Daji is always going to be a good pick, man. Powwow is just such a good tool, especially at the pro level of play where you're landing that ultimate every time. They don't miss that shot, so you're essentially getting 3 forms of CC where you're probably burning 3 beads or pulling somebody in and setting up very well. And, well, if you get pulled in, you're probably just going to die, especially in the current meta where the follow-up for the Kings would have been immediately into more CC from the Atlas or a Medusa damage output, or if the Bolts picked it up for themselves, it would have been a Fafnir stun into AMC defense shred. So, in removing that, we don't have to concern ourselves too much going forward. I like it. I think it's just a fine ban.
Still a couple of other top pick junglers still out there. Fenrir, maybe not the top pick at this point there. And then Serket still available if they wish to go with it. But for now, the Bolts will lock in Guan Yu, potentially throwing that god over there into the solo lane for Haddix. And now we still wait to see what the final pick is going to be for the Olympus Bolts. Only a few more seconds. Oh, how did we forget? That Bastet was still open after all of this time. 9th pick up here by the Bolts.
I wasn't expecting the Bastet to get picked up here because of the matchup into some of these tankier front lines. Bastet really flourishes when there are a lot of really squishy targets on the other side that you can just leap in, apply your damage, either fully commit yourself or jump out and rinse, repeat. If you're continually clawing an Atlas, a Bologna, or a Gilgamesh, you're probably not getting the most major of value, but still the displacement very valuable. I think Bastet's going to fit into the majority of drafts regardless. The Kings, on the other hand, I'll be honest, I'm not really a massive Poseidon fan.
Yeah, and it's nothing against, like, you know, the player in general. This god has just been struggling time and time again in almost every single matchup that we play. Poseidons haven't been finding the most value out of their Krakens. I will say that I do like it up against Fafnir because it's a very easy god to punish as soon as he goes to that transformation. But who cares about Poseidon? Because Agni is still left up, and that one will go over to BMT.
Yeah, the opposite elemental, but still an incredibly strong pick, and one that I associate very closely with BMT. Even before Agni was solidly in the meta, BMT was playing it very consistently. He's got some great poke targets, can throw out some damage from a range that Zeus is going to struggle to return damage from, and applying poke to Zeus is going to make it that much easier for your frontline dive of the Kings to find value. I think it works out very well, and you've got some decent matchups in that Guan Yu with Cavalry Charge might struggle to finish off that stun onto Agni, who's got that very quick dash available. You've already built a very strong front line around him. I like this King's draft.
Specifically with this King's draft, going up against the Zeus, I mean, Venenu essentially kind of got to free cast a little bit in that game. I mean, you were getting to the point where you were sending 2 people to try and get to this Zeus, but Venenu was pumping out too much damage right back to them. Do the Kings have that answer this time to be able to try and shut down this Zeus?
I think so. Atlas, Bellona, and Gilgamesh all have got really good engage tools. You've got some global presence from the Atlas to finish off those kills if Zeus does get too far away. Gilgamesh CC lockdown. Bellona's got disarm to make sure that Amuzan won't be able to peel as easily either. So it is generally going to be Zeus and AMC acting together to make sure that they're both safe, and Bellona targets out both of them. You need to auto-attack to apply those charges. You need to auto-attack to apply that damage with AMC. I really do like this dive from the Kings. That said, the Bolts have got really good peel. You've got stuns, multiple stuns from the Fafnir. You've got great displacement and stuns from the Guan Yu, healing as well. The Bolts are not going to make it easy for you to finish off Ven.
How's that Guan Yu matchup over against Bellona going to look? Because, I mean, Guan, we see him kind of pepper himself into the meta every so often. Bellona's kind of, you know, stamped her place into being at this point here. How's that matchup over towards solo lane kind of go?
So it's going to look a lot like every other solo lane matchup in that they don't kill each other, and they're going to rotate pretty often. And that's generally what it is. Bellona is going to be consistently healing at all times from Death Toll. Guan Yu only some of the time from his first ability.
Yeah, not going to have nearly as much sustain immediately given out towards both of them, but should be a Sparks Flying match here. The Bolts and the Kings both went to a full 3 games yesterday. We could still see another potential full 3 out here today between these two teams. The Olympus Bolts, though, starting the set up 1-0, are just 1 game from closing it out up against the Camelot Kings and starting off their season with a 2-0, and I'm sure that the Kings do not want to go down 0-2 to start up.
No, not at all, especially with all the respect the Kings have been getting, and well-earned respect as well. They really do have some of the best macro play in the league. The reigning world champion said that they were essentially the largest threat at Worlds. The Kings, they deserve more than an 0-2.
The Kings are going to try and bring this to a Game 3. Can they do it here in Game 2? Let's jump right in and find out.
Well, this is going to be a fun one to watch. Will the Bolts be able to close this one out in 2? Question I honestly didn't think I was going to be asking today. We'll find out here in game number 2. Haddix on the Guan Yu immediately. Trelly's the thing I want to talk about, so that's what we're going to be stuck with. Not just like, you know, matchup versus Bellona, but like what he brings to the table. Why we're not really seeing him a whole ton. Like, you know, he's not the meta warrior that we're used to seeing. Then again, he just played Shock, so I don't know if there's a backing for this or not.
Yeah, I think what Miff said on the desk, it carries a lot of weight here. It doesn't really seem like you're going to want to 1v1 the Bellona anyways. And based on what Haddix built last game with the Bluestone into the Rune Forged Hammer, Guan Yu going to be proccing that pretty consistently. The ult, it's going to 100-0 just out of anyone who gets Talulu assaulted before. You know, you shred the protections and you're just tanky as heck and you just ride them at that point. So the horse does a lot of damage with that item, obviously. So right now, Haddix is looking to just get ahead or at least stay neutral, not really fight against Variety, and then make those sick rotations. But looking at their relic start here, we have a Beads coming out of Haddix, but the teleport for Variety, which he didn't go last game. So now you're going to have to be looking at the Bellona rotations a lot more.
You're talking about, you know, specifically trying to get to the AMC, get to the Zeus. All of a sudden, 1 deep ward, teleport a little bit later on, and you're in the back line. Maybe you're going to be the gameplay changer for the Kings. We'll see how it ends up going through, because there's a lot of synergy on the side of the Bolts. And here's something that we have not seen a whole ton of. We got to see it a little bit last year. But, you know, again, dropping this relic from Jake specifically, giving, like, I guess a little bit of power, but ward vision as well, I guess, if you want to call it for that. We saw it crop up, was it like at the beginning of Phase 3 last year? Like, it was there for like 3 weeks and then disappears, this Bracer of Radiance, and then, of course, the upgrades that it can have. Not common, realistically, not something I'm used to seeing.
No, we've seen the Belts of Frenzy, those sort of things for the early game pressure, but the Bracer is going to do the same sort of thing, right? You put it right next to the wave, you give yourself that little buff whenever you're clearing and just boxing, that sort of thing. But also, do you do want to upgrade it, use it late game? You could double it as a ward, or just put it down at the Fire Giant. It's going to help a lot. Obviously, looking at the Olympus Bolts, right? That's hold that thought as Lasbra finds an easy kill onto Variety. No beads available. That's a teleport. So once that cat went down, that one's locked up here.
And that one, like, it was just kind of classic. Like, there wasn't anything special about it. They didn't do a twist. Lasbra walks up into the lane and says, cool, what's up? Let's fight. And then does the thing. They kill him. It's very fun to watch, though, because we were talking about it in, like, for us at least, we've been talking a lot about, okay, cool, Variety's going to be the dude to help control Vind, help control Bara. And he can't really do that well if you get Haddix really far ahead. So one gank over there. I honestly want to even see more from Lasbra on that side of the map. Because, you know, this Atlas, I think we've seen Wrong You play it. It's going to be impactful whether it's ahead, behind, or not, just because he's going to do the CC. Netroid may be worth it, but I'm not going to fight into a Medusa this early on. So I feel like that Bellona is a really good pressure point on the side of the Kings. Lasbra, those over on this side of the map, the duo. Is he going to get something out of it? Genetic specifically too deep, and he's going to be able to slow them down. There's the shell to keep him going, but not enough. A leap from Lasbra gets the damage, and it's a 2-0 start for the jungler.
I'm loving what Lasbra's doing right now. Obviously, in the right lane, trying to get a kill early on, does find the first blood, immediately says, I don't want this mace item anymore. I'm going into Transcendence. I have first blood gold. And now, goes over to the duo lane, finds another kill. This time, Captain Twig, he doesn't find the kill. Wow! 6 to 5!
It's just, I don't even know. I don't have words for this one. You get a good kill in the duo as you're highlighting it, and then the drop kick just shy. It almost hits Vin. Oh, but it doesn't, and that's what matters most. You take to 5 at maybe the most opportune time for Twig there. And it's a 3-0 start for the Bolts 3 minutes in. Very similar pace. We had a high-octane action from these two teams in game number 1, Trelly, but it wasn't this one-sided. It was a lot more back and forth. In fact, the Bolts were only getting kills on Genetics. This time around, they've got some really hefty, important targets across the board.
Yeah, we've been harping on Lasbra's, you know, just bringing everything to this team. If he is on pulling, if he's on fire early, the whole Bolts as a unit are going to flourish. And right now, Lasbra is part of all of the action. Again, finding that gank in right lane, going right over immediately to help out at the purple buff, finding another Twig. Still looking for Ven here.
There's the drop kick. It's going to be enough. Big man Tings with the flame wave finds the final damage. Lasbra, I thought was going to go in for a second there. Having that leap out is helpful, but not enough security for him to feel comfortable jumping in. With him and Jake, just going to clean up the farm. Unfortunately, watch as Venenu goes down. The Kings finally happy to pull one back, and they get it onto Tings.
Yeah, getting the beads down on Ven, obviously great. Twig, of course, wants that first kill. Doesn't end up getting it. Looks like Genetics is going to go for the gravity well on Barrett. Good beads, just keep him out of harm's way there as he goes back to sit under that tower. But as I was saying, if Twig gets the beads down, and you know you're pretty upset about dying there, but you say, hey, I can just come back in like, what, 30 seconds and do the same thing over again. This time, no beads, so that's going to work out.
Well, Variety, part 2, same as part 1 here, man, is going to be, again, about as blanket statement of a gank as you could see from Lasbra. He walks into lane, he damages him, and Variety dies, except this time it's about 30 feet back from where it happened the first time, and it's under the tier 1 tower. So Haddix healing, probably going to come into the equation a little bit later, but a 1-level lead right now, 2 assists, and a 3-0-1 jungler beside him.
And Haddix not opting to go for that Rune Forge that we saw last game, this time slotting into the Blackthorn Hammer. Now this pretty much was the end-all be-all meta last season, as Genetics is gonna die once again for this offering. There's no way this detonate doesn't finish, right? Oh my gosh.
Oh my god, it doesn't finish him. But where's he going to go from here? Where do you walk? The damage is just recent enough. If you go into the Phoenix, the damage is there, but it still gives the credit over to Vin. So he gets a second kill. I like, because like Bara starts walking up, Vin's just like standing on the other side, and Genetics is halfway through the back, and it just feels like a recipe for disaster. And it was, unfortunately, 5-1, 6 kills, 6 minutes, but most of them going over towards the Bolts, and all 5 of them landing on Lasbra and Vin. Not where you want to find them.
I really would like someone to get a compilation of every time Genetics overextended for this obelisk. He obviously put so much
We're
value
in day 2. It's bad if there's a montage already.
I mean, he doesn't always dive, but at the very least, he brings everyone towards him. He has to use some sort of relic to get out. But again, he does get the Indra Scepter, so I think he really does value that Indra Scepter more than his early game Atlas life right now. He's going to have a lot of extra damage here if he does catch out Barracuda. Remember, he already got the beads once. Still about 50 seconds on that timer if he does want to regain.
It might be, something to do here. He even has an experience lead over Jake. Maybe that has something to do with this jungle fight. Good immunity from Jake, immunes out. The dropkick leaps back, and he's able to keep himself alive. Lasbra goes for Tings, and Lasbra gets the kill. Variety was laying in wait, though, for the leap back. Lasbra is slow, and Lasbra is dead. Netroid with a good rotation gets it, but here's Haddix, and he's looking for the stun. It's going to be 2-4-1, and the bolts aren't done yet. A good stun by Jake, but an uncomfortable detransformation. He's going to leap back forward. Another stun, the lightning storm, and that's all they need. Genetics, you might have the experience lead over Jake, but he's got the assists.
I was going to harp on how great that Petrify was, and Netroid just realizing he had pressure in the lane and making a sick rotation. But then you look over, they still won the fight even down a man, and Barracuda steals away the purple buff, pushes a wave under tower, and is now rotating over to red. So I think they definitely were able to just get as much far as they can, but Jake, so much damage.
Well, okay. It looks like it was close. A dash from Tings and an ult from him. So I guess it goes 2 for 2, but you got Twig and Tings versus Lasbra, I believe, and then Jake. And so jungle for jungle, but Jake versus literally anybody on the other team, he's going to be happy giving up that life for them. He'll be back in just a couple of seconds anyway. It's what the Kings are opting to do on this side of the map, looking for a greater Scorpion Steal. Not looking for. They're going to get it pretty easily there. And again, it's small neutral objective. It actually has been interesting. We keep bringing up the gold charts every now and then, but it's a lot closer in terms of golden experience than the kills read.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, the Camelot Kings are just finding every sort of farm that they can despite losing these engagements. I mean, I think it's mostly falling on the back of Tings right now. He is just a madman dashing to farm, making sure to get these mid camps off cooldown, getting the right and the left. Again, they stole away that Greater Scorpion as well, so just making sure to stay relatively even in this game despite falling a little bit in the kills department. The kills don't really matter. They don't do anything for you if you're not getting the farm on top of that.
Well, Jake stunned against the wall. Leaps good, but the damage is better from Netroid and Twig. But that's a big one, right around the Gold Fury. 8 minutes 45. It was around this time last game that the Kings decided to start it up. Genetics is going to drop the ult onto the Fury. Barra's going to peek over, leashed by the Kings. They don't feel confident in their abilities to pull this one. And the Bolts get the Oracle Harpy, so Vision goes over to the blue team. And they're going to feel maybe even better here, right across the ward for Lasbra. So Netroid should know that he's there.
Yeah, I don't think Netroid's going to post out too much. Sort of does keep looking over there, but maybe he just doesn't think he's going to show up. I think, oh, this is the bait here. He knows BMT and Genetics are coming, so he is going to post up. Lasbra takes the bait. Going to take a lot of damage.
Yeah, he's trying to get out. The tick damage is going to be good enough. If Big Man Tings drops a Meteor, Stinger was thrown out, and there's the Swarm. But Netroid has enough health and enough healing. He's going to be able to walk out of that one, honestly, with more health than he had.
Yeah, it was a nice shell by Genetics right when that Swarm hit, just in case Bear was leveling that ability full. So just a little bit of damage there, and it looks like the shell was enough to make sure his ADC can stay in lane and just continue to farm up here. But again, while that was all going down, the Agni ticked over to level 12 at almost 10 minutes. So that's going to be some crazy farming, once again, that Big Man Tinks is doing.
Yeah, it's a lot, again, just control that's going over to the Kings in comparison. But here's an ult coming down from Haddix. I don't expect that to lead to too much. Variety has to use his ult in response. Maybe that's a big deal. We'll see how quickly those two come up overall. Beads versus Teleport was the conversation earlier, and so far neither of them have had to be used too heavily just yet. I think we'll keep our eyes on that. The Obelisk's still a big conversation topic over here on the left-hand side, given how aggressive teams have been. But what was a much more massive 5-1 lead for the Bolts has been brought down to 8-5, and there's still golden experience tipping over towards the Kings.
Yeah, at the moment, I'm honestly a little bit surprised as to how Captain Twig is itemizing. Usually we see this sort of Berserker Shield, auto-attack-centric build for the Gilgamesh. Right now, 2 red items. Jotun's into Brawler's Beatstick, obviously prioritizing the ability damage that Gilgamesh can bring instead of that sort of auto-attack, just keep beating away at you with your one-pop sort of style. And obviously with the drop kick and the Winds of Samash, that is a big amount of burst damage, but you just usually see the Gilgamesh smacking away with auto-attacks.
Well, we'll see if this build is going to help them out around the Gold Fury. Jake is here, and we've seen Steals for Less. He's going to transform right on top of Twig, but his props are going to be peeled off and shredded thanks to genetics. Twig gets the kill, and the Gold Fury started up one more time. Lasbra coming around one side, Haddix the other, and he's going to go in for a stun. There's going to be a brilliant immunity as well. Gets the kill onto Twig, so it's 1 for 1, but they're looking for a little bit more. Vin goes down, and Variety's in the back line going up against Bera, and he's got a lot to say about the option, trying to peel, trying to get the damage, but he does end up killing Bera before they can retaliate. Variety still low. Haddix trying to do something, but he's sustaining enough. I have no idea where it's coming from. Finally, they take down the solo laner, but it's cost them 3-4 now in the entirety of this fight, and probably the Gold Fury to boot.
I don't think they really have the HP to tank this, though.
No.
Big man Tings is not going to volunteer himself to pull this
and
one.
Haddix isn't done.
Yeah, and obviously Haddix getting some heals with Jake. That's going to make sure to get his cooldowns back up. You don't want to deal with another cavalry charge right now. His ultimate already back up here if he does choose to use it. So I think that's the off switch for the Camelot Kings, saying, hey, we may have had the numbers advantage, but no one really wants to deal with Haddix trying to defend this Gold Fury once again. So we're going to take our small win and then just head back to base. Obviously now we get some double relics being picked up here, so we're seeing BMT, Beads, and Aegis. That's going to be very difficult to dive at the moment. You don't really have any sort of, pressure on the back line. Lasbra obviously finding a good amount of damage there in that fight, but the Agni relatively untouched.
Yeah, he's been just fine. 4 for 2 trade there. You can see the team fight summary. And I think really the difference maker is going to continue being this experience in Gold League. The Bolts, whether or not they can fight back right now hasn't really been the conversation. It's more just, yeah, okay, cool, you're doing great early on, but you're not getting anything. The Kings are still getting it. As Gold Fury, I think more weight, the longer this goes on, the more back and forth it keeps going, or at this rate, the more it goes in favor of the Kings, the more weight that Gold Fury has for either squad, either a massive lead that could be brought up here for the Kings early on, or maybe something that the Bolts can use to fight back. Bera's going to have to just watch this one from the spectator screen, though. He gets controlled pretty harshly there in the Harpy Pit.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the beads just came up or were available the whole time, but either way, Netroid was just able to pick that one up pretty easily. Again, this is what the strength of this Atlas pick brings, just being able to pick up someone, not even using an ultimate ability and saying, here we go, as Lasbra takes a lot of damage. That was just the Flame Wave. There was still a bomb that could have connected there as well. That's the damage of the double flat pen Agni build.
Yeah, the damage numbers seem almost ridiculously in favor of the Kings here. You can see like Golden Hand right now that they're going to be spending, but specifically what you're getting out of this, I honestly expected the Agni to be way higher from what we've seen out of Tings. That 3,900 has been very effective 3,900 damage, though. Not surprising to see Bologna up at the top. I will say, it surprises me. After that last fight, Haddix is in there. Talu Assault typically gets a lot of ticks, a lot of damage. But everybody else, it hasn't felt the same in terms of the damage. I think most of Lasbra's, I would even argue, is probably from the beginning of the game, from all those ganks, and not necessarily the last team fight.
Yeah, not too much AoE on the Bastet. Obviously, if everyone groups up, your Razor Whip is going to do a fair bit, but just making sure to, lock down damage on one target seems to be the current playstyle of how this Bastet works. Again, Variety has that Frostbound Hammer, so sitting anywhere near Bologna right now, you're going to be getting slowed down and just auto-attack the heck. The Berserker Shield already finished, so a fair bit of just auto-attack-centric damage coming out of this solo laner. And again, I have to look at these mid laners at the moment. We have a Soul Reaver just ticked over and finishes for BMT, so Agni going to be doing even more poke damage in this mid lane. I mean, all eyes have to be on the Agni right now. They have to shut him down.
Yeah, damage that we were already talking about wasn't enough for him. He wanted more. He's hungry for more, and he's going to be able to find a little bit here on this Agni. It makes it frightening with how much he's been able to do. One of the premier Agni players, even before he got some small buffs, and there you can see, I think, timing changes that make things a lot easier for him. That's really what we've seen on the Noxious Fumes, as well as the Flame Wave, the dash, the ult, the stun, being a lot more prevalent a lot more readily available than the combo used to be, making it very easy to connect. And that CC, I mean, you were just talking about like Lasbra having kind of a lack of wide CC and specifically like team-wide damage as well. I see a lot of what, I guess Haddix is like the team CC. Wow, they just took that. The Camelot Kings take the Gold Fury. Disregard everything I was saying. That's going to be a good gold lead, and they just kind of did it.
Yeah, I mean, Netroid did finish that Silver Branch, bro, so just being able to have crazy amounts of attack speed, they burned it so quickly, only using the Gamma Ray Burst and a few Agni Bombs. That was a quick Gold Fury, to say the least, and now the Pyromans are trying to be traded by the Bolts, but with Agni walking up, this range, again, the range and the damage from the Meteors, I don't think they're going to be able to group up on this Pyro, and now the Kings are looking at it.
It's half health. They're going to have to leash this one and pull away. There's a pickup onto Jake from Genetics, tossing him to the Sharks, but is it going to be enough? Lightning Storm gets dropped, but the damage isn't spread as much as they would like. Twig is low. Lasbra might be able to find him. The cat gets thrown out, but he gets cut off. It's Tings instead who picks up the first kill of this engagement. It's on to the Bastet, making sure that cat has nothing more to say.
Yeah, I mean, Lasbra tried to find the solo kill in the back, but Captain Twig was able to heal up just enough not to die that one.
Oh
my like a big stun by Jake, and that's that stinger from Barracuda, just making sure to get that prot shred. A great bit of damage, a little return kill there, obviously, and now it's going to be a 3v3, but Haddix going to have to deal with the Frostbound Hammer here.
Yeah, he's going to have to play this one carefully. I cannot get over how much damage Vin just did. Variety diving the tier 1. Has enough prots to do this. Goes for the stun. Haddix is going to ult. That's going to disengage him a little bit. The heal's going to be there. He's running to Barra. And I don't know if Barra's the guy that you want to help you. He's going to get some autos out here. But you are low. And Variety just as low. Honey slow. But it's not going to be enough for Barra to get aggressive again. A good kill for the Kings. And maybe an unnecessary death for the Bolts.
Yeah, that was a solo through and through. Variety just chased him. Even Barra wasn't able to pull that one away. So it looks like Variety, again, on this Bellona pick, able to just do so much, not only to the carries in the backline, but against Haddix himself, obviously. Not able to escape from that one, even with the horse. But looks like Lasbra trying to get the solo kill, and he will. Barracuda steals that one away. I think he's, yeah, I think Lasbra still probably could have had one, but making sure your ADC gets it as well. Obviously, Lasbra's already got 5 kills. Give one to Barra.
Share the love, right? And that's going to be the goal here. Pyromancer, Bolts are going to be able to secure that one, and they're taking a divot. This was a 5K gold lead just a couple of minutes ago, and so just trying to chisel some of that away and bring it down to 3K in favor of the Kings. 13-13, 26 kills, 18 minutes in. And honestly, Trelly, with the resets that are about to come through, we've got a little while before the Fury spawns up, the Oni Fury that's going to be spawning up over here. Feels like this is the time for these teams to reflect, specifically the Bolts. What is going wrong with our 5v5s, and for the Kings, to just keep doing what they're doing, because their farm game has been getting them much further ahead of the Bolts every time they've had any map state like this.
Yeah, I would say so. Big man Tings just ticked over to level 19, finished a full Obsidian Shard on the back. Of course, Ven also did just finish a full Obsidian Shard on the back. So both of these mages kind of just carrying a lot of damage and a lot of weight on their shoulders here. They're going to be needing to hit pretty consistently, as Genetics might just get deleted by this Lightning Storm.
God.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
he
the
actually
damage,
did.
it's just too much. Obsidian Shard, if you're looking to shred through him and you don't have the Stinger available to you, I guess that's the next best thing, right? Kick it off there. Now, Netroid might get caught out. Lasbra seemed like he was going to be maybe a little more aggressive. Variety getting shredded here, and it's going to be a lot of damage dealt to him. Good stun from Netroid, and the jump in from Variety. They're trying to turn this around, and they're going to be able to pick up Haddix. They're going to get rid of Jake, and they're going to keep rushing forward. Vin's in trouble. Chain Lightning can only do so much, and it's not enough damage to peel completely. He's got to figure out where he wants to run. That movement speed paying dividends right now, but Variety's not giving up the chase. Everybody else, well, they want Barra, and they're going to go for him. Good stun from Tings. They kill him off, and they are one shy of a deicide, and it is just going to be how long and how far can Vin chase. And well,
this is going to be an interesting one.
Don't do anything, Vin. Just now you're watching a Zeus in his natural habitat. He's going to go for the kill, and he takes him in the back. I thought it was going to be a murder, no doubt. Well, maybe just a small play for the Bolts. It's the FG for the Kings 20 minutes in.
Yeah, obviously no one around to defend this one. That was just a great little cat and mouse chase. And of course, Variety didn't have the ultimate available. So at that point, you really just have to say, like, I'll chase him. But guys, I don't want to get too close. Did you see how much damage he did to Genetics? So Ven still able to find some sort of success. But everyone else cannot say the same right now. Camelot King is going to get that Fire Giant, win that fight pretty handedly. You do get FG off one. Obviously, you don't have the Bologna with that Fire Giant buff, so that's going to be a small window of opportunity. Maybe looking for another pick here. Big Man Tings is going to be at the red buff, but I don't think they snipped this one out.
Well, this is going to be my obligatory fantasy talk, which is that Vince 8-2-0 and happens to be the mid laner for my team. Feeling pretty good about the stats. Maybe changing though as the pace of the game is. Not necessarily maybe the position you want to be in for with Fire Giant on the Kings. That's going to make a big change. That Oni Fury shredded by the Bolt, so they get something back in their favor. And proactive play despite the Fire Giant going the other way. 4 towers still standing for the Bolts here. 21 minutes in. Just a few minutes left on this Fire Giant power play. 3 minutes for the Kings. And they should at least get this tier 1 tower. It has no health virtually already. But where the Bolts defend and how they defend, that's going to be a different question.
Yeah, do they want to step up to the tier 2 tower here? Obviously, it is going to be a little bit difficult with Lasbra in the right lane just trying to defend, but these Oni waves are going to help relieve some of that pressure, of course, down the right and the left side. But the Camelot Kings just going to take that tier 2 tower, posture towards this right lane, and they're going to take care of these Oni minions now, not let them become a problem later on in the push.
This is where that difference, we were talking a lot about EFG last game, and that's because no FG died prior to that. Removing those backdoor protections makes it a lot easier. With minions here, it's going to help the Kings out a lot, and they're still going to get a second tier 2. 1 minute has been burned, or I should say 2 minutes has been burned on this power play. And the Bolts are falling a little bit further behind for it. They lose 3 of the towers that were standing. And they still have the tier 2 in left, and that's all. Those minions you had mentioned, they are helping out. In fact, Vin, he's trying to give them as much pressure as he can on left. Might be able to, with the backs from the Kings and the positioning, should be able to help that wave get a tier 1 no problem. And so that's a little infusion back for the Bolts. And again, proactive play despite being behind.
Yeah, the Bolts are just trying to take over to level 20 here. Ven, obviously, does just get that, so we're going to have to see if he opts to upgrade the Soul Reaver, or try to go into that Seer of the Jungle like last game, or even Protector of the Jungle, whichever one he sees fit here. But it does look like they might be posturing for this last tier 2 tower, possibly even a Phoenix play, but it's going to be very difficult. Looking at the supports itemization, you just got to feel bad for Jake. He does not really have the farm to be tanky right now. Level 14 Fafnir only has a Shogun, so whenever Netroid's on top of him, there's going to be a lot of penetration coming and just so much damage. You don't have any sort of physical protection until that Sovereignty gets finished, maybe even like an Emperor's Armor because you realize how far behind you are and you want to get your structures going. So Jake's going to be a little bit of trouble here.
This is where you almost want to be able to donate some gold. Like somebody could probably afford it. We'll see if they can afford anything here. Lasbra going to use the ult onto Variety, trying to save himself, but Twig jumps under the Phoenix. And there's not going to be enough pressure from Barra or anyone else to retaliate against that. You had mentioned it, but standing outside the tier 2 line are the other 3 members of the Kings. And trying to protect it, it's going to be Vin, Haddox, and Jake standing around. Might not be the safest play. Variety uses that teleport, rotates over. Twig walks the old-fashioned way, and they're going to be able to walk in, take that tier 2. But time is what the Bolts have been trying to buy, and time is what they have. 18 seconds left on the power play. 5 members of the Kings on left. They're going to go into the Phoenix here. I did not expect the play to jump in. Jake gets the transformation immediately. They're trying to burn down Variety. Netroid's ult gets thrown out their way, and the Kings are on the retreat. Did they get more than they wanted? Did they get exactly what they wanted, forcing those ults? Well, that's up to you to decide.
And they did get double relics from both Variety and Captain Twig, so for the Fire Giant fight, those are going to be down for just a little bit. Again, probably just going to wait until those relics are up before they decide to pull here. But I'm pretty sure right now trying to push into that Lightning Storm is going to be very difficult. I don't think. Once the Zeus ult goes down, the King said, all right, let's just back it up here. We still have a few bit of relics, and obviously we picked Lasbra there. No beads available for a bit. It looks like the Camelot Kings are just going to be getting ready, probably pull this Pyromancer. You still have Tings getting crazy amounts of farm on the left side of the map, going to get his red buff as well. So doesn't quite have that last item finished. Once that goes through here, we're going to see a lot more damage out of this Agni once again, but it does look like the Pyromancer is going to be their choice.
It's going to be a little easier to burn down right now, less risky than maybe trying to get aggressive onto the Bolts or try to stand anywhere that wouldn't be good for you. It is going to be the Soul Reaver. You had called it out for Vin, so he's finished that. And this is where this conversation goes, right? You had mentioned the relic choices going to be about 30 seconds to a minute for Twig to get all of his back. A little longer for Jake on some of those. Same thing for the beads from Lasbra. But having those power spikes, like a Rada Tahuti for Tings, you get the Mantle there and the Spirit Robe for Twig and Variety. It feels like these are going to make some big changes in the way this fight plays out.
Yeah, Lasbra doesn't have his starter upgraded either. Does have that Titan's Vein serrated, so good amount of tank damage, but Haddix is getting real low here, forced into the ult. Oh my god!
He doesn't even get out of there. Genetics cleans it up with the ult. Seemed like maybe he needed to cancel out and heal, but there was no safe place to do it. That's a 1 pickup for the Kings, and it should be just enough to burn down that FG without any response. Although Jake, Bara, Lasbra stepping up a little bit. Yeah, they're not going to aggress into the FG, though, trying to find out if they can kill off Variety. The Bolts are going to fall back. We're talking about another 4 minutes of Fire Giant here for the Kings. 3 Phoenixes to try and defend if you are the Bolts.
Yeah, this is where these tank items are really coming into play here. Variety pretty much uncontested at the moment. Obviously, they tried to throw a little bit into him. I believe Bear missed the Stinger, and even at that point had the Eagles rally if you wanted to escape there. So now you're trying to defend a Phoenix 5v4 with Fire Giant. I don't think this one's going to go too well.
Oh, Variety blinks forward, jumps in, and he's taking a lot of damage in the process, but the Phoenix and his health bar are falling at about the same rate. It looks like the Kings should be able to get this. Look at Lasbra, though. He's coming around to the back. He's looking for damage, doesn't find enough onto Tings, onto Variety. Lightning Storm, maybe a little bit short of the targets that he wanted, but the damage is still there from Venenu. It peels back, but after they lose the Phoenix, still only right-hand side, but the Kings have 3 minutes to work with.
Yeah, arguably the best Phoenix to lose if you are going to have to give up one there. It's going to be pushing next to the Fire Giant, so in the event of an EFG pull, you could still just send someone pretty close to the Fire Giant and the minions to clear that one. So you do have a little bit of a shimmering ray of hope here, but at the moment, again, it just seems like Variety has so much freedom being able to dive this backline. He took a lot of damage, but still able to get out there, and the Phoenix, that was what they wanted. They weren't trying to find any sort of picks. They could have been looking for the end, but of course, right now, you've got your Fire Giant. You're just trying to play this one as slow, methodical as possible. Obviously, the last game was decided by an EFG as well, so both of these teams know exactly what's at stake here. As the Primal Fury is up, and we do have a few Bolts sort of looking at this purple buff, seeing if they can maybe find a pick.
Impressed to see them this far forward. Tings
is by himself.
Alone.
Does no one
They're
know
not
where he...
looking over there. I think they're waiting for them to go for the gold, waiting for someone to maybe misstep. You have to be able to see this. They might find Genetics first, though. That's going to be a ward. You have to remember these hives act as vision. And just because of where that was, falls apart. That could have... We could see!
Yeah,
that,
I was going to say, obviously
huge
we could see where Tings was, but I could have swore they would have at least
all
heard
the Bolts looking that way.
Yeah, it seems like they couldn't even hear the Make It Rain. Like, he was on the purple. Like, I figured they could hear that at least, but no, he just was able to get the farm and just keep pushing there. So it looks like no sort of gank for the Olympus Bolts. They are just going to try to defend, but right now Lasbra has a fire wave, 2 fire waves to deal with here, so I don't think it's going to be a 4v5 unless they are just going to let the fire minions go into Titan.
Yeah, you see some red pings on the right-hand side, the Kings saying, look, we got fire minions and they're going in. We can do this. And immediately into the middle, Phoenix, it's getting burned down. Nobody's going to be able to defend that in time. Lasbra making his loop around. In fact, getting aggressed on by Variety under the Titan already. And Variety is winning the trade despite the 6th man technically on the board to help out with the Bolts there. Damage onto the left hand. Phoenix seems to be good. Netroid's going to need just a couple more autos, and that bird's going to die. 3 down for the Bolts. And now it comes down to defense, defense, defense. A minute on this Fire Giant. And how lucky are the Kings feeling? If they feel confident enough to walk into the Titan room, that's going to be a different conversation. Lasbra low, and Twig jumps in. Lasbra is taking a lot. CC is going to be good, but it's not good enough. Immuned out and then jumped on by Variety, who finds a huge play. And the Titan, half health. Lightning Storm gets dropped. Netroid finds Barra, and they only need those 2 kills to push us to 3. The Kings, they take game number 2.
Both of these teams feeling extremely confident with these Phoenixes down, just able to absolutely burn that Titan. This time, though, the Camelot Kings are not going to fear the Titan room. They are going to find their aggression and just completely melt that thing.
And I love to see how they go about that one. Specifically, how aggressive they play it. I think the Kings, despite early leads, I mean, we saw kill after kill after kill after kill for the Bolts early on, and the Kings didn't care about it. They still had the gold lead.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at Tings again, how much he was able to keep staying farmed up despite everyone else. Lasbra finding some sort of success, getting a little bit of a lead, but Tings was so far ahead and just able to do so much damage on this Agni pick. It was incredible.
It was impressive to see from the Agni. I have to give Variety, I think, a huge shout out for what that Bologna was able to provide, especially late game when he just walked at them as a one-man army and took half health bars anytime he wanted to and had nothing disappearing from his. Well played by the Kings. We'll see if they can close this one out in 3 or if the Bolts will bring it back right after this.
Game 3 so far here in the SPL. Game number 2 goes over to the Camelot Kings here up against the Olympus Bolts. And it's still another back-and-forth game, though the Kings did manage to hold control for the majority of that one there. A lot of the battle does come down to the mid lane, but also a little more shout towards variety into this one here. I mean, this Bologna had a lot more impact than the Artie was able to have in game number 1. He was really able to get into those back lines and get some big shots out here, Mifflin.
Yeah, variety comes up massive in this, but it's hard to talk about anyone when both mid laners are having as good a game as they were. At one point, Ven like 8-2, 6-1 for big man Tings, but regardless, games are not won by individual players, but by the entirety of the team. And in this one, the entirety of the team's name is Variety, all right? I'm gonna go ahead and toss it over to him because the Bologna really was just making it nearly impossible in some of these big major team fights for Barracuda to operate. Even Ven, post the 8-2, was starting to struggle in some of these team fights, and with that space created, big man Tings makes some pretty massive plays on the Agni, a pick that I had thought we'd see a lot of from him this year, especially considering how relatively powerful it is compared to the rest of the mage pool.
And the man on your screen here is creating a lot of space for his team. I mean, in this fight alone, diving against 2 backliners seemingly by himself and then still being able to live through such a brutal onslaught immediately afterward. Variety having a much better game here in game number 2 on the Bologna versus the Artie. And I don't know how he continued to live all the way up until that point. I mean, it's not like even he was so far ahead by then. I mean, he was barely breaking even up against Haddix at the early stage of the game.
Well, you see, Scourge heals you for every 3 auto attacks you land, and then also the Death Toll, and then he's like pretty tanky.
Okay.
And that kind of just added up to that scenario.
Okay, I'm picking up what you're throwing down here, Mifflin, but Kings turned around in game number 2. They ended just a little bit quicker. Only took them about a half hour this time around to get that one there. The man on your screen will probably be one of the ones that's talked about by us here on the Picks and Bans, and also talked in general, I think, by both these teams as to maybe trying to get Variety something a little heavier priority as these drafts are going on.
Yeah, I think that the Bolts will probably put some Credo his way. You really probably want to limit that. Considering that the RDO was by and large a lot worse for the composition that the Kings were running last time, I think the Bolts might be in a position where they have to ban out both. I think that if Variety is allowed to go back towards that RDO, the comp will be built around it a lot better in a Game 3 scenario. So if the Bolts were to just ban out a couple of Soul Laners in the first phase, I wouldn't be too angry about it. But also, you've got like 21, 6-8 damage put up by big man Tings, only like 1,000 less than Variety, and you got to put an asterisk on Varieties because he's the Soul Laner. Like at least 7,000 of that was in the lane, so maybe limit big man Tings as well.
And then the question comes down if the Bolts do elect to take both bans over against Variety, take the Bologna and the RDO both in the banning phase. That means they're going to have to give up something, and the 2 consistent bans that have been the same here for the Bolts have been Khepri and Daji. Which of those ones, if they decide to ban against Variety, would be one that you would want to take away here in Picks and Bans?
I think maybe you can let the Daji through. Khepri is just so annoying, and we know that the genetics is just so good on this pick that you really don't want to allow him to have it. That said, the Bolts, if they want to, in the first pick position, can essentially just use their first pick as another ban. Seeing as the bans have stayed largely the same so far throughout this set, maybe the Bolts say, we let the Zeus through, take the Bologna for ourselves. It seems to be a pretty decent answer to that pick.
Except that the Kings are not going to let the Zeus through. They're going to ban that with the Emoji Nox this time around here in game number 3, and it's going to be Khepri, Daji, Gilgamesh over on the side of the Bolts. So Gilgamesh is not going to make his way into game number 3. And the god that's been banned by the Bolts all the way up until this point has been this Horus, and that's going to be the first one that they pick up here for themselves. That now gives the option of either the RDO or the Bologna over to the Kings.
Yeah, so I think the Kings in this position don't even necessarily have to take one for themselves. Both are very strong picks. Both should be able to hold their own in lane. Both bring similar strengths to the team fight come late game. So instead, I wouldn't be surprised to see them prioritize their other selections, and that's exactly what they do. Medusa and Kleena locked in. Kleena going to operate more so as a flex pick, can go into the jungle, can head over into the soul lane. So going to keep the Bolts guessing going forward. I am genuinely surprised to see Horus see this much priority in the picks. Maybe it's been dominating scrims a little bit more than I've realized, but it is a generally just very good pick. Brings very good lane pressure, has phenomenal mobility, sustain in some of these team fights. It makes some of these late game sieges are very interesting in that you never really know where they're going to start it up. They might be grouped up on your mid Phoenix, but maybe they're actually going for the left Phoenix. One ultimate can bring your entire team there.
And it's something that Jake liked to play yesterday. It's something that Genetics saw success on yesterday as far as that Horus was concerned. So maybe just between these two teams specifically, really having a little bit more priority towards that horse. The Bolts are taking a while here on their second and third picks. With that Clean, as you mentioned, some flexibility on that god, the Medusa. We pretty much know where that god is likely going to be slotted over towards that dual lane here. But the Bolts have a lot of decisions to make now. Do they want to try and grab one of their solo laners right out the gate? Do they want to risk and see if this Kleena is going to go over to solo or in towards jungle? We'll have to wait and see here. And with this Zeus band away, we are going to have to get a fresh look at Venenu here in this third game.
We will. Man, Ven is a very adaptable mid laner, though. There are plenty of picks out there. He's very capable of playing the Agni. He's very capable of playing the Thoth, and both of those still up. Tiamat, certainly an option going forward. So we could even potentially see the Bolts elect to go for their mid laner after a second phase of bans and force the Kings to try and limit Ven's pool. Instead, Cabrakan locked in immediately. Has some of that flex potential, can go into solo. No longer going to solo. Not going to talk about flex potential at all. With the front line completely locked in for the Bolts. It is probably slated for Lasbra in the jungle. It's a pick that he's had a lot of success on in the past. This initiator, or even potentially just tack nuke for your team if you decide to go full damage. Has some very strong matchups. If it is Kleena in the jungle, might limit what she's willing to max out first. Generally, you max out that Screech, but probably not going to do that. If Cabrakan's nearby, he can stun you out every single time.
Not going to be the easiest of matchups for that jungle slot here. Kings now with one more pick before we go into the second wave of bans. And that now opens the question, man, maybe you just grab your mid laner here if you are the Kings, grab that and then throw two bans and kind of put Venenu a little bit further down the god pool necessarily. And with already Zeus taken away, you can pick up Agni or Thoth for yourself, ban the other one, maybe ban Tiamat there, and then kind of where are we looking at that point, Mifflin?
Well, you'd be looking at a lot of mage bans, right? It's
That's
hard.
true.
I need to see it. I'm a visual learner, man. I got to see it on the board. Maybe if that were the case, the Bolts have got, or Ven specifically, has got a couple of eclectic picks in his back pocket. He's one to go towards the Vulcan on occasion. Looking at the draft right now from the Kings, only 2 picks, so you're not really too confident going for something like a Vulcan, but the 2 that the Kings have got already, they don't deal with it very well.
I see your
Still waiting on that last one here. Will be Cerberus picked up for the Camelot Kings. And I'm not 100% convinced that this will be towards the solo lane. We have seen Genetics break this god out into the support role a couple of times in the past, so we'll really have to see what comes out here for the remainder of the Kings. Second ban starting up, and immediately it will be shots over to the mid lane. I almost forgot that Morgan was in the game, and really both of these mid laners, quite a few of our mid laners here in the SPL, really do have a very staunch Morgan pick that they could grab for themselves. So that one will get taken out, and the Bolts will respond with a Geb ban.
Yeah, just trying to keep Genetics at bay. So I guess they are saying that this is likely going to be Cerberus going towards the solo lane, or they're going to hedge their bets and just remove that opportunity, remove that flex potential, and maybe even pigeonhole the Cerberus into support in removing the Geb. I'm keeping my eyes on the Kings' next ban. I think it is likely going to be towards Ven, and Chiron is a pick that Ven is very capable of playing, and we've seen him play in the past. And I think they're right to ban out a Hunter there, because you've already got 2 pretty decent magical damage dealers in Cabrakan and Cthulhu on the side of the Bolts. But they have left, both the Kings and the Bolts, that is, a lot of just viable meta mages up there. There's Agni still on the table, Tiamat still out there, Thoth still available as well. So I don't think neither Big Man Tings or Ven are severely limited at all.
No, they're not going to have to dig very far for these god vans, or god picks, I should say, here, because as mentioned, only Zeus and the Morgan as far as the mages are concerned. But it will be reverse away from the Tiamat. Merlin going to be locked in on the side of the Camelot Kings. And now the option goes back over to the Bolts. Still need their mid laner, still need their Hunter for Barracuda and Venenu. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see a potential double Hunter composition come out. This kind of airs back to some of the metas that we've seen in the past with this really staunch triple front line, and then you get 2 hard carries in the back line. And especially with how prominent a Muzenkov has been coming back up as of recent, it wouldn't surprise me to see them maybe go for that route.
Yeah, AMC would fit that style of draft, but I'm not sure that I love AMC into what the Kings have picked for themselves already. Cerberus, very good at diving. Kleena, very good at diving. AMC, generally going to be towards mid, and with that last pick still available for the Kings, might be a little bit difficult to want to go towards something that immobile. And speaking of the Kings draft, this is a lot of objective burn. Medusa with the Viper shot, Kleena with the ultimates, and Merlin being one of the best objective burn mages in the game. Could lead to some pretty quick Gold Furies or even Pyromancers early on.
It's not going to be AMC. It's not going to be 2 Hunters. It's going to be 1 with Cupid once again here for Barracuda, the only one really electing to go back towards this pick. And then Persephone over towards that mid lane. So no Thoth, no Agni, no Tiamat. It's going to be Merlin versus Persephone up in that mid lane. And the Kings holding on to that Cerberus up until this point, have final pick, and they're looking at Atlas one more time here for Game 3.
Yeah, I'm going to keep saying it. We've not once seen it, but I'm going to keep saying it. Atlas has potential in the soul lane, so there is slight flex potential there. Fafnir locked in, though, and, well, I wouldn't say that I want him in the soul lane just about ever. So, Kalina is going to be your jungler for the Camelot Kings, with Cerberus holding it down in the short lane, and Fafnir matching up with Medusa over in the long. Again, just maxing out some of that objective burn potential. Give Coerce over to Medusa, and Gold Furies will fall pretty quickly, especially with a Merlin and a Kalina at your back. Whereas the Bolts, on the other hand, have got a very, very strong team fight composition. You've got phenomenal initiation. Horus, Cabrakan, and Cthulhu can spearhead some of these fights for you. Persephone from downtown can toss out that Grasp of Death. In the jungle fight specifically, will lock down entire sections of the map. And even Cupid, with a no-play zone ultimate of Fields of Love, can force out some relic selections from the Kings. We might see just like a Heavenly Sprint in response to him.
I mean, we're seeing basically a massive Venn diagram of no-play field here with the Persephone Cupid. I mean, both of those having massive cripples thrown towards their way. I mean, this is an immense amount of space. And you throw a Cthulhu out there for the Olympus Bolts. I mean, Mifflin, if you're the Kings, how in the world are you ever going to get to their backline? And then once you do get to that backline, how do you even deal with this Persephone Cupid combo?
Well, it could be with the Kings draft, not necessarily completely about the backline dive. They've got good tools to deal with the front line. Merlin in that flame stance is very good at DPSing down a Cthulhu that has already descended in madness. We've seen that the Tank Shred style of build is very popular amongst hunters right now, so Medusa with Viper Shot should be able to help out a good deal as well. I think it really comes down to what build style is Lasbra going towards on this Cabrakan? Is he going to be that Bruiser Initiator? Is he going to be that one-shot glass cannon? And depending on that, the Kings are going to have to adapt on the fly and figure out how to address it.
Is there a preference on that kind of build style? Do you want to see this more kind of Bruiser-y-esque Cabrakan being able to dive back there, or would you rather him go for this more glass cannon style?
Because Merlin is not a standard burst mage, I think that you're going to get a lot more value from the Bruiser style because you're allowed to stick around in these fights a lot longer. Had Merlin been even like a Ra or a Poseidon or something that's just like, I need to get out there and get my Kraken off, that's the value of my team fight, then you want to go Glass Cannon because it's a high-value trade. But because Merlin's more so about consistent damage output throughout a team fight, I think Bruiser probably does a little bit better.
Well, it's going to be a big Game 3 here between both of these teams. The Olympus Bolts coming off of a win yesterday. The Camelot Kings coming in off of a loss. This could be where we have two teams split out 1-1 for our very first week, or one team go completely defeated and the other one undefeated to start this one out. Who's going to come out on top in Game number 3? Olympus Bolts versus the Camelot Kings, starting right now.
The last time we'll see these two teams go against each other for a little while now. And this will determine who gets to either tie things up in the standings or sit pretty up towards the top if you are the Bolts. And immediately we get some interesting things. Jake's on the Horus. You've got Lasbra on the Cabrakan. Cthulhu's made it all the way in. All the interesting things, all the things that are out of the ordinary, they're sitting on the side of the Bolts.
Yeah, I gotta be honest, with the whole set on the line, I'm surprised that they opted to go for Lasbra on this Cabrakan pick. They do have a fair bit of magical damage now with the double Guardian dive squad of Cthulhu and Cabrakan. Of course, Jake on this Horus is also going to be diving in the backline as well, but still, you have to decide, like, can we really keep Ven alive on this Persephone? Not too safe after the leap is down, things of that nature, but with so many tanks on the map, I imagine your dive is going to be pretty solid once you get these items online.
It's going to be fun to watch as that goes forward, both for Haddix, for Lasbra, and for Jake, all the frontliners that are going to be leading the way. Persephone in mid lane up against the Merlin. Different styles of play, different things they can bring to the team fight. Tings has already showcased, like, just fantastic farming. He's up 2-1 as of right now. I have to imagine Venenu's going to be catching up soon, but, like, it's just been like little things like that, right? Where right now, yeah, that means nothing. Ven should hit 2, yeah, right there. But 3 to 4 levels from now, when all of a sudden Tings is like 7 and you're 5, you really start to feel that impact.
It's still funny to say that Tings was double Ven's level right there before the minions were cleared. That was insane. But this Cabrakan pick obviously going to bring a lot amount of early pressure into this mid lane. I'm surprised again. I like the Kleena so much in the solo lane. We've seen how much this sort of hybrid build Kleena does late game. But seeing Captain Twig pilot it in the jungle can be very interesting. Seeing how these ganks sort of play out, utilizing all these walls on the map where Kleena can be hiding in the walls like no other character can.
Yeah, definitely something. I think that opens Twig up. I always think of Twig as like the setup player, and I feel like Kleena falls in like a half-half category. Like she can really hard carry. She can also just like, hey, I'm gonna kill him mostly dead, and then you can try to get the last hit. We'll see what happens. I guess we'll see what Twig ends up doing throughout a lot of this one. He's a fun guy to watch. I'm sure that's going to be an impact here. Haddix has not been winning a lot of these trades with Variety, and that might have been the best example. Locked down in the mire, autos thrown out anyway, and Variety, I think his health bar moved up in the process, so not a lot of damage over there. Mid lane has plenty available to it. Lasber tries to get aggressive on Twig, and that's where that Cabrakan's going to come in handy.
Yeah, it's not an easy play style to go from, this hardcore Frostbound dive Bellona into the more I'm going to set up for my team with a Stygian Torment, sort of Cerberus play style. But both of them, of course, can be very tanky and annoying to deal with if you are the carries of the Olympus Bolts. Cerberus able to output so much damage right now with this sort of hybrid build. Could be a Stone of Binding, could be a Void Stone. Either way, you're going to be getting a fair amount of early game damage. And yeah, I think the Cthulhu is going to be losing those trades at least for a little bit longer.
Yeah, something that, well, we got to see, the one first blood from Hardcore on a Cthulhu that was absolutely ridiculous that it happened to begin with. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised that we aren't going to see that level of pressure. It is going to be now that Descent into Madness available, probably not for another 5 levels. Let's call it 7 minutes, if not more, before we truly see Haddix start to rotate and maybe make those huge impact plays that ult can bring. It is going to instead be Jake, the setup that this Horus can bring, as well as Lasbury. He was pinged out there, hanging around the entrance to the mid lane right next to Twig. And he's still kind of looking for something. Might be able to get a stun here. Walks forward, whiffs the stun, chases for Tings. Tings blinks forward, or flickers forward. Very, very important distinction, and he's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's interesting to see right now. Usually when we see this Cabrakan in like the solo lane, for example, Shell opting to be the first relic to get just because it can't upgrade into that Phantom Shell, sort of immune the walls and just walk through them. Right now, though, we're seeing a sprint, and for Variety, a teleport once again, not opting to go for any sort of safer initiation, just saying, I'm going to be able to out-rotate you. If I get poked out, I can back and get there quicker. The teleport has been pretty powerful for him.
Yeah, it's been controlling. I expect to see him in a lot of these fights. Healing is going to be abundant in the duo lane for the Bolts. There's going to be the ult from Bara, the Fields of Love thrown out, and they hit 5 first. But they're not going to be able to find the first blood off of that. But the beans, I guess, in this case, because of the skin, as well as the dash from Horus, make it so that any poke that happens between the duo lane is a lot more permanent on the side of the Kings than it is for the Bolts.
I love that we're going to refer to it now as the beans instead of the hearts.
Yeah, those are beans.
Yeah, whatever he's got, he shares, and that's true. The beans
Sometimes they're delicious dumplings.
Yeah, it really just depends on what skin you want, but Jake going to be in some trouble here.
Yeah, dashes away. He's not getting out of this one, though. Chase down. Netroid, credit for the kill. Good gank by Twig. And falls into, again, that category. Setup. I'll deal the damage. You get the kill. And it makes it a lot easier. Lasber's starting to come over towards the right-hand side of the map, but Variety's not going to be here. It's just a blue buff secure, so first blood, an easy scoop up for the Camelot Kings.
And we already know where Genetics is, right on those offerings, making sure to steal those away. This time, though, at least they picked Awesome Jake before Genetics wants to trade a fair bit of his life for these offerings. For the Obelisk, obviously. This time, last game, I believe he was dying for those same offerings, but you're not going to be rotated on 3 people at the moment. Obviously, Persephone is going to be sitting in mid lane here, so you don't have to really worry about that one. But such a different play style. Yeah. Again, last game, at about this point, Lasber had already tried probably 2-3 ganks and found success. Cabrakan, going to be a different sort of play style. You really want to be itemized before you can go for that crazy lockdown. At the moment, though, Spear of Desolation and a Blink available if Lasber does want to get active on these squishies.
Yeah, that feels like it's falling into the, well, potentially going towards the glass cannon that Mifflin had mentioned on the desk. Not a very tanky start, to say the least, but not a surprising start. It's just wondering where he's gonna go at this point. The Blink's available for him, as you had highlighted. He's got a speed buff, he can run around real fast. He even has Horus ult in the event that they ever decide to just kind of drop everybody in the back line. Twig's going to be hanging out in the wall. I felt like there could have been a big play, maybe potential happening, and there's still potential for it. Genetics right here. Twig kind of laying traps for them, waiting for the mid camps to get started up. They're going to get picked up, though, by the bolts. It's just a game of neutrals right now. That First Blood bounty being the big separator in favor of the Kings.
Yep, and the Obelisk finally going their way. We already know exactly where Genetics should be pathing right now. Picking up that Indra Scepter, making sure to have a little bit of extra damage. Again, this Fafnir already brings a fair bit of damage with that Draconic Transformation, but having the little shocky boy, so to speak, is going to add a little bit of extra DPS on any sort of dive. So Genetics usually pretty active at picking that up right when it spawns here. I'd say the Camelot Kings have to have the most confirmed first Obelisk out of any other team in the league right now.
That's something I do want to eventually, and hopefully we'll be able to do it, but keep track of like the Obelisk uptime, things like that, like how efficient you were with your Obelisk, what you got done with it, how much, like, I don't know if it tracks it, but like how much damage and or healing it does, things like that. It would be fun to just watch throughout the year, or however long the Obelisk lasts. Hopefully the year, because that'd be a fun year-long stat to be like, oh, look at this. This team was the worst in Phase 1. They had no idea what to do with this Obelisk. Phase 3, all of a sudden, they're all over it. It'd be fun to track. We'll see if it ends up helping or hurting. Well, it will only help Genetics. Although he's a little aggressive. Gets the purple buff. Good stun from Netroid as well. Catches out 2 and forces them to fall back. Caught him looking. And the Kings don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah, that Petrify is going to pretty much make sure that Genetics is not going to get caught out there. And it looks like the retreat is on the table for the Olympus Bolts. Obviously not wanting to get caught up in this one. But yeah, I think it would be a nice little stat to keep track of. Obviously, I believe, right, the Solar Scarabs had that Draugr last year, right? They had the most Draugrs confirmed out of everyone.
Before that, we had the gold shrine efficiency.
Yep. We always got to keep, we always
There's got to be
keep
something.
Track. Exactly. As Lasbra looking on Twig here, finally getting a little bit of aggressive, catches the dash.
And it's going to be enough to catch him out here. The drop down from Jake, but it's Lasbra. He takes too much damage. They do get Twig, but it costs them so much to be able to afford that. They lose Vin as well. The Kings read that fight and respond appropriately.
And it looks like Genetics is about to steal away the green buff, which does not actually go his way here, but great play by Variety, making sure to help out Twig there. Almost made it into the wall. The threshold was not there. You have to be above a certain amount of HP to actually escape into that wall. And nicely done by Lasbra, making sure that Kalina can't escape.
I don't think anyone's picked up their scepter yet. I think it's still hanging out over there. See, it's still sitting down on the ground back there.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, what are you doing here? Your uptime, it's going down. Look, if I get my wish, this is going to ruin your numbers on that.
It's right there. Go get it. I think Twig's finally going to pick it up.
Nope.
Whoa. He just looked at it. He doesn't even care.
Yeah, well, apparently, you know what? I think I'm learning something here. It's more important to deny it to the Bolts than to have it on the Kings. That's what their goal is here. It's an insult to them. And now Jake, maybe going to get insulted a little bit more. Damage is being dealt his way. Slowed down thanks to Netroid. Feels a love for the peel. No mana for Netroid. Good mez out of Bera. Ends up connecting on quite a few. Slows him down, but not enough to stop the purple invade.
And it looks like the purple buff is all the Camelot Kings are going to be here for, obviously.
Oh, they're definitely not going for a scepter.
No, they're not going to go for the scepter. Wait, the big man Kings walked right by it too. No one wants the extra damage. I would fight people for this buff, and they don't seem to want it. But either way, Variety obviously not making that rotation over, unlike Haddix, who thought maybe they'd pull the Gold Fury off of all that with the Draconic Transformation, but it looks like not going to be the case. So Haddix is going to have to walk all the way back, make sure he gets that wave that's going under his tower right now. Variety has a solid lead. Just a little bit, but it's enough to say, hey, if you rotate away, I'm going to be getting even further ahead, and it's going to start to add up.
Well, you can finally see, and this might be the first time this has happened, a lead, at least in terms of some gold. Maybe it's just the difference of a back for Genetics, but he's got a tier 2 up over where Genetics is. He's not the experience going in his favor. He barely has the stacks of thieves going in his favor, but that's something, I guess, for him to finally hang his hat on. Because that's been an easy conversation. Both games, when we've got to those late game fights, we're like, man, Jake got melted. We look down and he's got 2.5, 3 items compared to Genetics, who's like 4 or 5 in. And it feels like that farm that Genetics is able to pick up all across the map has been paying off a little bit more. This might be a difference maker. Jake takes half of his HP and manages to walk away. That Gold Fury, it's becoming an ever-present threat. The Kings All they need is one big pick and they can take it.
Take a look at the build path of the mid laners. Ven obviously wanting to get that Charon's coin online as quickly as possible, try to get stacked up. That's all well and good. But Big Man Tings had so much gold that he just said, I'm going to buy a full rod of Tahuti here. Second item. It's going to give me that percentage pen. Also a huge power spike in the mid lane. Obviously this Merlin is going to be damaging pretty much everyone that comes at him at this point. You have the Divine Ruin, you have that flat pen for the squishier targets, and then you have the Rod of Tahuti if you want to do some sort of, percentage pen in that regard. So both of them building a lot of damage in their own right, but this early Rod of Tahuti for Big Man Tings just showing how much he's been able to farm up here.
And you're trying to strip through Prots, and right now we can see, for Haddix, definitely going to be helpful over there. Jake, still stacking up the Thebes, goes into the Relic Dagger. So not a lot of Prots on that one, a lot of health though. And theoretically that Blink and whatever he gets in 3 levels is going to come up a little bit more often. We'll have to watch to see if that makes a difference. Gets aggressive on the Twig with the Blink, but isn't enough to lock him down, and there's not enough follow damage to be able to get the kill fully. So Twig's going to be able to get out of that one. It's Sentry wards around the mid lane, and Jake's still taking a lot of damage there. Is the output that Tings has with that Rod of Tahuti that you just highlighted. And I think we're seeing who's winning the item race.
Yeah, definitely seems like it. Finally, though, looking at Barracuda, not opting to go for the full red items build that he's been going time and time again. This time actually getting an Aussie as Genetics recognizes that they have some lead here, and they are going for the Coerce. The Gold Fury is going to be pulled.
It's going to take half of its health incredibly fast. There's the rest of it almost immediately. Burned down faster in the latter half than how they started. So a good play from the Kings to call that out and kick it off. Really good start. And they pull Barra's ult as well on top of that. So a long cooldown that's going to be awaiting him. He's going to have to sit under this tier 1 and hope for safety. The stun doesn't connect there by Genetics, not that it's stopping him. So small wins that escalate this gold lead even further. 3,013 minutes sitting in the Kings' pockets.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult for Barra to land these Fields of Loves at all at the moment. Obviously, we already saw Genetics having the sprint available to just sort of run out whenever the team needs to, but also Variety opting to go for a Wingblade third item. So that's going to proc on the Fields of Love as well to sort of zoom you out whenever you're stuck there. So I think Barracuda recognizes that, hey, maybe if I build all ability damage and I never hit my ult, it's just not going to get that much benefit. Trying to go into sort of that shred build, obviously, but looking again, look at the Camelot Kings itemization here. Big Man Tings has that Obsidian Shard almost online. Looks like Captain Twig is about to start that Serrated, so that's going to be a good amount of penetration as well. And Netroid probably sitting on a fair bit of gold here, not back just yet.
Netroid, outside of, he's been making big plays despite not being, the focal point of conversation, right? I think earlier we saw him peel with, a 2-man stun on this ult. The Medusa, we've been watching it more often over the last, month or so. And it really does feel like those ults are getting a lot more utility than we've seen in the past. Even the classic handy, what's it called? The training wheels, there it is. Mm-hmm. That is going to give you, the Athena taunt into the ult where it's they have to look at you now. I feel like we've seen more ults hit in the last month from Medusa than even when you had that.
Yeah, she definitely has climbed back into the meta in a big way, and it seems like with her being out of the meta for a bit, people forgot about that ult. Maybe
don't look at it.
Yeah, maybe just forgot about the sound cue or how long it takes to charge up. Whatever it may be, looks like Lasbra might be walking into a big amount of damage. Good thing the hammer missed there, would have been stunned out, but Variety still looking to get very aggressive around this Pyromancer. They got the Gold Fury. The Camelot Kings are looking for more, though. It looks like they're not ready to pull just yet.
And this is where things get, again, maybe really awkward. Variety pulls in 2, and that's the go button for Lasbra. Twig takes so much damage. Haddix is going to continue the chase. There's the Trimmers from Lasbra to keep things separated, and it's going to be the damage necessary. Jake ults forward and isn't going to be able to find anybody. Twig gets out of there alive. Haddix still in his ult form, detransforms now, falls down into some damage from Netroid, but it doesn't seem like anything big's going to come out of that in terms of kills. Pyromancer, at least, goes the way of the bolts, so it's not all for nothing.
You still have Lasbra's ult available just in case anyone posts up too much, but besides that, I really don't think the Olympus Bolts want to continue this push. They probably just want to try and defend this tower. Meyer is going to be enough, but Genetics gets a big stun.
And immediately aggressive for Lasbra. And immediately retreating for Lasbra. He's gotten the Rod of Tahuti second following, I guess, Big Man Tings' steps. But it's maybe not helping as much. Good damage, but the close gap may be a little more difficult for him. He had to back off. Haddix is pretty low Tier 1 tower aggressed on by the Bolts. Sorry, by the Kings. And the Bolts just have to watch as it falls down. Greater Scorpion probably going to get stolen away by them as well. And despite getting a big neutral objective, gold starts to swing back in favor of the Kings.
Yeah, I'm still looking at Variety. That ult is back up, but it looks like finally the Camelot Kings are going to back up here. Not really post up at this middle, fork in the map at the moment. They don't really want to look for any more aggression. Obviously, this time around, Lasbra is going to be taking some farm out of the left lane. Jake trying to find some sort of stun by himself up here. He's going to have to back away. We're back to the old reset here where Oni Fury's about to spawn in once again. No one really has enough damage to burn down a Fire Giant. Looks like 2 Tier 1 towers are going to go down for the Camelot King. So pretty much making sure that that Pyromancer does not go the way of the Olympus Bolts. The gold, I should say, netting that out. And now we're just going to be going back to that Oni Fury. Like I said, it's going to be spawning here shortly, and that's going to be the next big team fight.
It's going to be explosive, I guess is the word I want to use for it. There's a lot that can just disappear in the blink of an eye if Genetic goes for the Dragon transformation. That damage bonus, essentially, that they're going to get from a Coerce, helping them burn down things like that Fury. Potentially burn down things like Jake if he goes too aggressive. Gets the stun onto Tings, but he's all alone. Twig is here. Luckily, Horus has a lot of mobility, and he's able to get out of there. But that's the dangerous game. I mean, again, Relic Dagger is the only thing he has online. There's the prots that you're going to get from Thieves, and that's it. Yeah, so he needs more.
The Horus pick can set up a lot in the mid game and then just dash out pretty freely. I still think this is just going to be a bit of a poke war here. I don't think we're going to find any sort of aggression. The Fury has spawned in. We're standing 5v5 at the moment, but neither team really trying to pull this just yet. Again, as you mentioned, the Draconic transformation is here. Fafnir could just, pop the dragon at any point and try to burn this down, but there's a lot of different steel tools on the map. Fields of Love, even though they're going to be able to sprint out of it, still is going to mez anyone that wants to get close to this Gold Fury, and then it's going to big explosion damage as well with the Transcendence, so not wanting to pull this objective just yet. Going back to the old farm game.
This is where... Maybe? No, okay. I was wondering if Haddix was going to, step forward, or if there was going to be something else going on. Beads burned by Barra over on the left-hand side, so that's good on Genetics. The damage numbers right now, heavily in favor of the Kings. Mainly coming out of the mid lane, but you can see where a lot of it is. There's that Dragon transformation, and all of a sudden the Oni Fury is looked at by the Kings. They burn down a Gold Fury incredibly quick, but Haddix is going to go in, descent into madness immediately to try and separate this team fight. Variety is isolated and alone. Nobody's able to chase them down or find the kill. Now all of a sudden, despite the fact that it's going to be 2 big transformations from each side, not a lot that the Kings were able to find on that. Not a lot the Bolts were able to do. They're going to get aggressive one more time. Jake gets pulled in, and Jake gets killed off. There's the walls from Lasbra, but he doesn't find the stun. The damage follow-up isn't there. It doesn't matter if you block him off. He's dead, and it's a 2-for-0 trade.
Yeah, that's a huge ult by Variety there, making sure to pull everyone in. Of course, the Fields of Love was there, and there was no sprint, but it's just not enough to peel. I just don't think Lasbra has enough damage right now to blink to the backline. Rod of Tahuti and Spear of Deso is a fair bit, but you're also just getting deleted as you're trying to do that damage right into the Petrify as well. It's just so difficult to try to push into that. Of course, the Camelot Kings are going to be able to get Gold Fury, and it looks like Ven is going to get soloed out by Variety.
There's the leap. Oh, it doesn't connect. Look, you got to get something. There it is. That finds the kill. Variety, yeah, he takes a little bit more damage, but I mean, who's going to do anything about it, right? Nobody is going to walk into the lane like that. No way is Barra going to absolutely. Okay, yeah, he slows down as he gets closer. Maybe rethinking it. Pigman Tings we can see was in the jungle. Farm going to be able to get picked up here by the Bolts. That's a lot of pressure. I mean, it's 6-1, the Camelot Kings. It's a very similar kill lead that the Bolts had last game, except the Camelot Kings also have the 5,500 gold and the 6,500, 6,800 experience that's going in their favor. 2 levels there in mid. I think just now catching up for Netroid, but 2 levels for your support, a level in jungle, and a small lead there for Variety. You're feeling it the most from Tings and Vin.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Variety to start every single fight with Stygian Torment right now. Every time he ults Jake, it seems like a kill is going to occur. No blink available this time for the Cerberus, but the Pyromancer already down, and the Cerberus is going to be front and center. Any Bolt that wants to step up is going to have to take the brunt of this damage.
The Cerberus already just leading the way, and a good stun. He's going to go for Lasbra, and he pulls him right in. The jungler eviscerated by the Kings, and Netroid finds another ult, but they're going up into the skies. Bera, he's alone, and he needs help, and that's going to be where the team comes in. They drop around, and it's the frontliners trying to separate things. Twig runs back to the right-hand lane, and now it's the Bolts surging forward. They find two in the duo lane and continue looking for the jungler. Can they get their third? The Mire knocks up Tings, but the gap just far enough. The blink forward from Haddix. Does he have the dash? Does he have anything? Well, they're going to be able to cut off Tings, no problem. 3 for 2, and they keep Bera and Vin kicking.
But at least Awesome Jake does get killed by Big Man Tanks as he goes down there. It was a beautiful blink by Twig to juke out the Grasping Death at the last second, but it looks like the scariest member of the Camelot Kings is still up for this defense. They're going to have to try to find some lockdown here. No beads available, no ult available, but it looks like they're not going to try to pull this with the Cerberus here.
Yeah, I feel like he might have been able to hold on to it if Haddix had a little more health. Bera didn't just get hit by Variety. Oh no, and Variety wants a little bit more. He's going for the ult. He throws him in. Bera, you stayed. You're welcome. Too long, Twig. Yeah, he's going to find that kill. And you know what? Haddix lives, but maybe at a greater cost. Variety scoffs at the damage from Lasbra and just walks away.
Variety is putting the team on his back at the moment. Any ult he's hitting is bringing in a free kill at that point, making sure that the Bolts were not able to pull Fire Giant there just by presence alone, just menacing aura, and then chasing out the Camelot Kings and blinking in to pick up Bera. So now you've got a 5v4 thanks to your solo laner, and the Fire Giant is back on the menu.
Unfortunately for the Bolts, it's not for them. It is all Kings right now. Good fight last time around, though. Instills a little more confidence in what the Bolts are bringing here. It's still 6,000 gold that is in favor of the Kings, and they're fighting at a numbers deficit. Bera's still not back for another 5 seconds. And they're going to get a little bit of poke, try to pull out whatever they can from Twig and the like. But it's not looking too hot for the Bolts in terms of positioning.
No, I'm looking at Jake's build once again. That always seems to be where I go to when I see the Bolts take a little bit of a lead deficit here. And obviously just the Sovereignty and the Thebe. It's a fair bit of tankiness, but the magical damage from Tings is going to be starting to add up, especially if you're trying to frontline, eating the brunt of those stance switches. It's going to be very difficult for Jake to try to live through these fights at the moment. Fire Giant picked up once again and put down once again. Still, just trying to tick over to level 20 here. We have Twig and Big Man Tings who have already reached that threshold, but no one on the Olympus Bolts can upgrade those starters.
Finally hits it for Haddix. But then you have to talk about gold, right? How much money do you have in order to spend that? Lasbra as well, another person that I have to keep my the eyes on just because. 0-3 for the Cabrakan. And after what we saw the last fight, he's got the Mantle of Discord. He gets picked up. He gets killed. And those beads, that is a crucial timer in order to avoid what Variety has been able to accomplish in terms of presence. At 2-0-5, 7 out of 9 kills. Yeah, Variety is absolutely helping lead the way. Same thing there for Twig. So there's still just a huge threat that's on the board. But Relics being up, I mean, save for Vin's beads, the Bolts should feel a little more confident about the next fight.
Yeah, as long as, I mean, again, Barracuda did take over that Silver Branch, so that's going to be a huge item to get online for this Cupid, obviously. Making sure that if you do get to the front line, obviously, because the last fight we saw, Barracuda sort of pseudo-assassin playstyle, got to the back line, dashed immediately on a Twig, and then sort of had to stall and wait for the to the sky shield because he was so deep. This time, though, probably more so looking to shred this Cerberus. Again, pretty much the go button for the Camelot Kings has been the Stygian Torment, this blink in from Variety. You don't want to let this Cerberus go unchecked right now. Still 2-0, has not fallen yet.
Haddix, takes a decent chunk from just a small volley from Big Man Tings. But that transformation, that change stance is going to be down for Tings for just a little bit, which means that maybe the combo potential disappears for it. We'll see that come back before the Bolts really choose to engage, and that poke is going to be important. And Ice Stance as of right now, and they are going to be able to pick up just a little bit. The Bolts trying to surge forward. Fire Giant's been kind of started leashed here. Jake gets pulled back thanks to Tings. And They're going to let this one slide one more time.
The longer they do this little dance, the more Barracuda can give the beans to his team. As we see here, they have the sustain in Horus and Cupid. Pyromancer going to be pulled, but at this point, they don't really care about the Pyromancer. They're more so looking at this Fire Giant. No one is getting farm right now, though. That's the big deal at the moment. Awesome J cannot continue his build as long as he is sitting right here trying to frontline. The waves are pushing in, but Lasbra's clearing them. So at the moment, you're just putting your support longer behind. And that's just an ultimate down and gone.
Yeah, I mean, makes a huge opening. Fields of Love no longer available. Blink here for Lasbra. Maybe he gets aggressive, maybe not. I'm starting to lean towards the not Haddock stunned out, and it's going to be twice now. Tries to get picked up by Variety, but it's not going to be enough. Jake barely makes it out of there alive. Walls dropped by Lasbra, but again, has to run away to maintain the life. Barra cannot stay the same. Jake, Vin, Lasbra, Haddix, all too low to try and contest this. Variety by themselves should be able to zone just enough of the bolts. And it's not going to be a big deal. Meyer was dropped. Fire Giant's going. Haddix blinks forward, walks in, is at least going to go for some damage, if not a steal. We'll see if they can do it, and they are able to take it. Lasbra walks forward with them. They lose Jake, they lose Haddix, and they might lose their jungler as well. But it's Vin, the hero saving grace, the flower, walking forward to steal the FG for him.
I don't think they can push in. This Persephone still able to do so much damage. Variety's looking for more here. I think they are able to kill if they really do try a turn, but they're just saying, hey, let's get out of here with our Fire Giant buff. Let's not risk it at the moment. We did steal it away only on 2, but there's still, that's a huge win for the Olympus Bolts, being able to say, hey, we're going to stop your push for a little bit. We're going to use this to farm up, and now you can't push into us with that Fire Giant buff. So now the Olympus Bolts take away that Fire Giant, but I think the Camelot Kings are still going to be getting a huge amount of gold here. Obviously, tier 2 tower on right already down. Gold Fury being looked at here. I don't think Variety is going to be able to tank this one, so they do actually have to back up in that regard. But now it really is all in the hands of the Bolts. Do they want to try to push with 2 Fire Giant buffs? I think they're going to look for it.
We can take a look back at that. Specifically from Vin, we got to see Haddix walk in. We got to see Lasbra walk in.
It was the
flower. He hit something. I don't even know if he intended to hit something and send it forward. But it did the job, and it got them power play that, like you said, maybe isn't going the way they wanted to. Minus 6K experience, again, maybe not a huge deal. You do get to notice that in the supports. Looking down, 4 levels separating Jake and Genetics. Not only is that the upgraded starter, but you have to think of the farm that comes with it. And speaking of which, it's essentially 3K in the hole for the Bolts. That has gone in favor of the Kings, despite the buff. Maybe putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound here for them. But they keep themselves in the game. They prolong what was feeling like a Kings 2-1. So they keep this conversation going for them. Gold Fury maybe looked at. And that'd be a weird thing to fight over 30 minutes in.
Yeah, I just think right now the Olympus Bolts are happy that they took that Fire Giant buff away from the Camelot Kings. I don't think they're going to use it to say, hey, let's run it down, get some Phoenixes, but at the very least they're saying, let's get our items online. We can use this time to sort of just sit back, pick up as much farm as we can until next Fire Giant when they'll try to pull once again. This time, though, again, Jake is not near any sort of farm. He's trying to play frontline for his team as a level 14 at 30 minutes.
Definitely difficult. Gold Fury started out by the Bolts, burned down to halfway fast. They're holding on to it. Haddix steps over some beans, gets his heals back. Gold Fury not fully leashed. Twig has it right now. Bolts are able to get that one, and they're looking for a little bit more. They get rid of Twig, and Haddix is surging forward in this descent into madness, trying to figure out where to go and who to lock down. Variety might be the target, stunned out by Jake. Fields of Love lower him down, and that's going to be the kill for Barracuda. They lose Lasbra in the process. Jake, level 15 and low health, surrounded by 3, and he's going to end up going down 2 for 2. But the Gold Fury goes to the Bolts.
Well, that is a little bit of a win for the Olympus Bolts. They're trading and getting the Fury. That's going to go a little bit towards, like I said, the itemization of the Olympus Bolts, trying to get these builds online. Tings is able to do so much damage right now. It'd be really nice if someone from the Olympus Bolts would be able to output that much. It looks like Barracuda kind of popped off in that fight specifically. I was seeing a lot of those Cupid autos connect, the chin size procs, things of that nature. I would like to see him itemize maybe into an Odysseus bow right now. That would definitely help out with that sort of AoE damage for this Cupid here. But again, BMT was just able to say, even though you guys killed 2, we're just going to stop that push in its tracks because I have so much damage on this Merlin pick right now. 5-1 for the mid laner of the Camelot Kings, and it looks like that Fire Giant is about to hang off in about 3 seconds or so, and we're going to go back to the enhanced Fire Giant, where the last 2 games have already been decided.
I got to give him credit, though, and you had kind of called this out. Not necessarily getting a lot done with that buff steal, but it was negative 3,000 gold when I had called it out, and essentially I think it was like negative 6k experience. A lot of that gets brought back to 0 at the end of it. So the bolts go net neutral before and after the FG. They get a level there for Jake. It's still 4 separating the 2, but that's going to be more important, I think, for him to hit 17 than it is for Genetics to hit 20. So get him some farm, get him some gold. Finally has some magical prots. You had mentioned Tings, the fact that he's, 10k damage above, I think, the next highest. Yeah, that's definitely hurting him. But I do think it's important, and maybe better for Bara. He had a lot of gold in hand. He just spent it on a Titan's Bane. That's because Variety was 3-0-9. If you can kill off Variety, despite the fact that Tings is doing a lot of damage and will find kills, absolutely, in return, it does still feel like something that is going to get pulled back slightly in your favor, just getting rid of that Cerberus.
Yeah, the Blink Surbolt is always going to be the initiation here for the Camelot Kings, unless Genetics hits a pretty sick hammer just to start off the fight here. Enhanced Fire Giant has just touched down, but again, Variety has that Blink Ult available, that Scorched Blink Ult, if, hits that Flames as well. The SpongeBob Blink, so to say, as we've been calling it recently. So now it looks like they're just going to be looking for that go button from Variety. Do you see the Blink Ult opportunity, or are you just going to sit back and let the bolts gain their positioning?
SpongeBob Blink, the man who said it the most isn't even here. Dave, it's his birthday. Happy birthday to you, man. This is a good set. I guess you're missing out on it, but, happy birthday. I hope you're enjoying the time off. I can't believe in any form or fashion that you'd be watching work while you're on PTO, so probably going to see this much later. And chat, you can spam it too. Just make them feel happy. And you know what? While you're at it, also spam happy birthday Jithens, but that's just to tilt him. It is actually Dave's birthday. And so use all of your sentiment on that one.
Yep, there you go. So we got lots of birthdays, obviously, but right now, it's gonna be feeling like your birthday if you get this enhanced Fire Giant. So still, no one really ready to just pull the thread. But it looks like Awesome Jake is. He's gonna jump in.
Uh-oh, goes in maybe too deep. Half health immediately. Haddox gets stunned out. This is where it gets dangerous. But like you said, the healing is still there. And there's those tasty beans coming down from Barracuda. As well as a dash. Yeah, there it is. The heal that's going to help out just a little bit, but still enough. Blink is going to be down. That's the biggest relic off the board. Bara throws out his ult, gets the mez. Variety takes a good chunk of that. Haddox goes forward, but doesn't go into the ult. So it's not going to be a huge engage.
The Thorns being down, though, that is going to be pretty massive. Here's Variety finally finds that Blink ult.
Oh, and there's the pull back, but he's not going to be able to grab anyone. Jake appropriately uses the ult to make sure he stays alive. Same thing for Haddox, but a lot of utility gone from the bolts.
Looking at the mid laners, though, Venenu and Big Man Tings hold on to their beads and Aegis. Those are going to be big points of contention. You still have a lot of safety from the 2 mages, but I would say the Camelot Kings winning this one pretty heavily, have the Coerce available. The Fire Giant has been started.
Notably, Netroi doesn't have either of those relics, whereas Bara kept his. So not only the mid laners, but Bara maybe feeling safe. Fire was started, leashed immediately. And the Kings are going to just let that one disappear for now. It is going to be enhanced. Stun onto Variety could mean death in just the blink of an eye if things go wrong. You have to watch. I mean, Frenzy up for Jake, not there for Genetics. Any burn potential that you have can change this next fight so quickly.
I'm just going to start chanting, one more level, one more level. Jake's so close.
He's so close.
He just ticked over to 16, but again, it seems like he's actively avoiding the waves. He does not want any sort of farm right now. He wants to win this game or lose this game before upgrading that Benevolence into the Compassion.
Look at this, though. This is good positioning from Jake. He's going to get both, well, he's going to get one of those back camps. Guaranteed experience that goes into his pocket. 951 experience needed to level up, and he's the only one on that chart that has any number higher than 0. And we just need it, like you said, to get the Compassion. It's literally just to get to the Compassion. We'll see if it makes a big difference for him here. Damage gets thrown out. Much tankier than earlier. but you can still see that damage much, much higher than the 10K it was earlier. Big Man Tings, 33,000, next highest sub 20. So he is more than happy with this 14K lead.
Lasbra still about 20 seconds away from that blink. They know that Captain Twig's beads are down. I imagine if Lasbra just catches Twig out, ults him away from any sort of walls, it'd be a pretty easy pick. But again, Twig is positioning, so anytime he's not in the wall, he's nowhere near this Kabrak, and he does not really want to get caught out here. No one does at this point. One pick could mean the Enhanced Fire Giant going your team's way, and that could also mean the set.
So after the last fight, we were talking about all the relics that were down and what that could mean. Now we are down to 20 seconds left on Lasbra's beads and 40 left on Twig's beads, and those are the only ones that are down anymore. Everybody else, well, they got theirs back. I guess there's still 20 seconds there for Jake's blink, so that's going to be something that maybe pauses them out. We'll just watch Thorns being up for Haddix, means he can get aggressive again and feel pretty confident in it. Ults are back up. Save for Twigs. Well, no, there it is. So now, maybe full fighting power. Pyromancer there. Aggression immediately. And that's going to be the Descent into Madness and the go button. Bolts get the Pyromancer, but can they get the kills? Haddix is trying to lead the way. He's taking a lot of damage in the process and falls back. Jake going to ult with himself, not with Haddix, though. And that's going to make this Cthulhu take maybe a little bit more damage than he wanted. Still, maintains his life. They're going to heal up. And they do get, again, a small bit of gold that goes back in their favor.
That's a bunch of ultimates expended by the Bolts, of course. Still have everything but Variety's ult for the Camelot Kings, but as we've been seeing, that's pretty much the go button for this team. If they want to find a sort of kill, it's going to be that Stygian Torment. So Variety not going to have that huge setup tool available. And usually, I would just sit back and say, hey, there's going to be a pull, but obviously, at the moment, Camelot Kings still not feeling confident enough to pull this one away. We've touched on it a bit right now, but there's no massive confirm on the map at the moment. I think Venenu's Flower Burst probably is the single best confirm if you are just talking about raw damage output. Merlin not really able to get that much burst damage. Of course, Petrify is pretty solid as well, but I think not wanting to 50-50 this Enhanced Fire Giant is going to be the name of the game, and they're still not going to pull this one.
All it takes is a fumble at this point. Look, it's been 6,000 gold for like 20 minutes in favor of the Kings. They got up, and then they plateaued hard. We're watching it. I can see you trying to celebrate. We're looking for Jake to hit 16. Keep your eyes on the timer.
He got away finally, and it still didn't tick over. How close is he to level 17?
He needs literally 8 experience. Like, you're actively avoiding farming this time. I could accidentally get 8 experience.
Kill the Scorpion for him,
Just
please.
do something to get him to 17. But then he's going to have to go back, and this is not the time to be in your base. Well, maybe this is going to be the moment. Look, we're looking at a 40-minute plus level 17 for Jake.
I mean, that's the only small win we could really look at here is Jake leveling up. What other small wins are there? Oh, they could get this Scorpion again. Those back camps are going to go their way. Besides that, as Twig going to find some big poke through the wall.
That's a little bit. And then look, Barra just he eats up and he's fine. Jake goes forward with the blink. And instead, he just eats a lot of damage. Not going to be able to find the setup. Relic Dagger paying dividends for Jake, though. Having that cooldown on those relics, he's been able to blink.
He did it!
And do everything a lot more. 39-16. Might have been the 39-15 minute mark. And Jake hits level 17, so the next time they get a breathing spot, he's going to be able to back off, but Variety gets aggressive. Variety is getting locked down. Variety eats a lot of damage, and Haddix goes to the Descent into Madness. They do not kill the opposing solo laner, and instead the Bolts are the ones falling back. There's no tier 2 here. The Kings got it ages ago at this point, and they're going to be able to get teleport for Variety, and they can start looking at the FG here. They might just be able to kill off Jake. They're chasing him down. The damage isn't going to be enough, and he stays alive.
It looks like the Enhanced Fire Giant
That's gotta be it.
is going to go the way of the Camelot Kings. Credit all to Captain Twig through the wall, able to poke out 3 members of the Olympus Bolts through the wall there. I'm pretty sure Ven actually almost died to the tail end of that clean ult. So Twig through the wall spells the Enhanced Fire Giant finally at 40 minutes going the way of the Camelot Kings. Now that's not the end-all be-all. Finally, Jake is able to finally upgrade that starter item. Still not done with his build at this point, but you're at the point where power pots are being bought, even 3K pots are being looked at, and your support not having a full build is going to hurt a wee bit at this point, but the Enhanced Fire Giant, that's the real dub on the map at the moment, and it's going to be very difficult for the Bolts to defend against this one.
20,000 damage. And that might sound like I'm saying, hey, X has done that. No, that's how much more damage Tings has done than anybody else in the game. 20,000 is how much Bera and Twig have put up as well. I'll give Netrued, I'll round him up for it. Tings is in the 40,000 damage marker right now. And it doesn't seem to be slowing down. Honestly, with an Enhanced Fire Giant, I think it's just going to keep going and separating from the rest of the game. These Tier 2 towers, practically meaningless in terms of what the Kings are going to do and how much damage they're going to take from them. Yeah, they knock them down like it's nothing. It's the Phoenixes, Trelly. That's where the trouble starts.
No, it's going to be very difficult to defend if it is a 3-2 push. Variety and Captain Twig in the mid lane, BMT, Netroid, and Genetics in this duo lane, but it looks like Twig is sort of going to posture back and forth, not really commit to either of them as he hides in the wall here. Just going to get some Heartseeker procs onto the Cthulhu. But yeah, either way, Enhanced Fire Giant is going to make it so a tank could solo these Phoenixes if given the opportunity. So it looks like maybe a 5v5 in the mid lane. The Kings not wanting to posture into the Phoenix just yet. They're sort of just feeling them out, seeing if they can find any sort of aggression.
We'll see if they do decide to get aggressive. Variety, teleport back up. Blink available. We'll be able to close that gap, no problem. Remember, backdoor protections get stripped. Jake goes for Netroid, but not going to be able to find the stun. Netroid, it's a few hits on that Phoenix. Takes it down about a quarter of its health. That's going to be some damage thrown out by Twig. The Kings are playing this patiently, maybe until just now Genetics walks forward. They get some damage onto Jake. The stun not going to connect from Variety, and the ult has to come out from Jake just to get some CC immunity. They're going to turn things around for a little bit. The damage seems to be there, but only onto Genetics. The Phoenix, on the other hand, is going down, and so are a majority of the Bolt's health bars. They have to play this carefully. They watch as the Phoenix gets taken.
Yeah, I'm very surprised Jake was even allowed to get into the skies at that point. If Haddix was able to body block a little bit of that damage just to make sure that Jake gets out. But obviously, this mid Phoenix is going to be looked at now, and it's melting away. Looks like the Kings are going to take that one for free as well. And they're even going to go for this right Phoenix. They are not worried. They have the regen from the Fire Giant, obviously. So at this point, they don't need to retreat. They can just sit here and go posture for this right Phoenix.
Deja Vu, you have the Coerce as well, so it's going to fall quickly, but that's going to be the go button for the Bolts, trying to separate things. Jake takes a lot of damage. Haddix separates them, and the Phoenix manages to stay alive. But are they going to be able to find anything on the tail end? There's still 45 seconds of the power play here for the Kings, and they're going to use that damage to burn through Haddix's health bar. He has nothing to offer, and now Bera is separated from the team. It's him versus Twig and Netroid, and he's not winning the fight. Bera goes down, and it's a 2-for-none so far in favor of the Kings, and they're going to continue this push. Jake taken down on the retreat, and it's Lasbra and Vin versus all 5 of the Camelot Kings. They go down the right-hand lane. They take the right side Phoenix, and they're walking into the Titan room. Variety might end up falling at the end. No, saved by Captain Twig. They get the full-on DSI. They get the win, and they take this 2-1 in favor of the Kings.
All of that stems, again, from Twig being able to poke out half of the Bolts through a wall with Kleena. That got them the Enhanced Fire Giant, and at that point, that got them all 3 Phoenixes, and then that's going to get them the Titan and the 2-1 victory.
It's got to be stressful. That felt like a 15-minute, it might have actually been a 15-minute Fire Giant dance. A lot of time spent there. I know me and you joking a little bit about specifically Jake's level, and I think that actually does come into play. It takes a while. There's a lot of fights where he is not as impactful as what we get to see out of Genetics, who had a 4-level lead for a majority of that until finally he had 20, and there was nowhere else to go for Jake but up. But outside of that, I mean, mentally taxing, physically, straining, when you're just a little bit of poke. Oh no, we can't fight. We gotta scurry away. It just keeps going back and forth, but the Kings, like you said, just one step from Twig makes the difference.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difference, right? Jake obviously doesn't even want to leave for a second to get farm, because if I'm not here to stun, if I'm not here to blink, and I'm not here to peel, that's the game thrown at that point. So just a great map play, obviously, by the Camelot Kings, and credit to Twig finding that amount of poke to make sure they could get that objective.
He opens the fight. It wins them a Fire Giant. It wins them the game at the very end. Kings up 2-1. They take this set, and they end up tying themselves 1-1 for the week. We're going to break that one down. Talk to the Kings themselves right after this.
Do you miss me at all? Do you think about the things we used to do? No, you couldn't stand tall. So why didn't you call? So many years has gone by, but I think about you all the time. Looks like you're changing and all. Well, why didn't you call? Something in the air, always something in the air. Inexplicable, I can feel it in the air. Can you feel me? Can you feel me? Can you feel me? Do you miss me at all? Do you think about the things we used to do? No, you couldn't stand tall. So why didn't you call? So many years has gone by, but I think about you all the time. Looks like you're changing and all. But why didn't you call? Something in the air, always something in the air. Inexplicable, I can feel it in the air. Can you feel me? Can you feel me? Can you feel me? Can you feel me? Something in the air, always something in the air. Inexplicable, I can feel it in the air. Can you feel me?
The Camelot Kings hold firm in game number 3, and they're able to bring themselves to a 2-1 victory in their second set of the weekend and our first set of the day here on this Saturday in the SPL. A much-needed win for these guys. That way they don't go down to 0-2 to start out this season. Instead, they get to start out with a nice 1-1 with a victory here. And Mifflin kind of watching this game back here, a lot of this coming through the mid lane. Big man Ting's able to make some big plays. The frontliners, though, for the Kings really stepping up in this last one.
Yeah, they really were. But if I had to give credit to the Kings in one regard, it's that these guys are simply magical. They're magicians. They just summon gold from nothing at all times. Doesn't matter if you're down like 5 kills in the early game. They're going up regardless. It's ridiculous how they're able to milk the map like that. Maybe they just got GPM spooling. Maybe they got some friends over in the dev building and their accounts just legitimately generate more gold. But you're right to highlight the front line in that they do create a lot of space. But where is this macro play coming from?
I don't know, man. Like when I was sitting out there with the rest of the players, they were all just sitting there going, man, it really feels like every one of the Kings just have Fafnir passive on no matter what god they're playing at here. Because, I mean, you're right to highlight. They were down 5-1 during this game. Even in game number 2, they're down quite a few kills, and they're still up 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 gold and continuing to climb throughout all stages of this game. I'm with you. I just don't understand where they keep finding this farm.
It's probably like mid camps and back camps and the enemy back camps and enemy buffs and just everywhere on the map. It's efficient splitting across the board, but if we had to talk about individual players, I think Big Man Ting certainly at the forefront. That guy has 2 phenomenal games back to back. I believe it was like 6-1 in the last one, 7-1 in this one. The mid laner has not been limited from the Camelot Kings, and well, he's got some pretty great facilitators built around him.
He's also got some disgusting damage. 50,000.
Is that allowed?
I don't know if that's legal. He did almost double anybody else on the map. The next closest to him was his own teammate, Captain Twig, at 28,000. That's barely half the... We're talking about where did he find gold? Where did he find his damage numbers?
And here's the thing, J-Mac. That's my mid laner for fantasy, all right? This is a good week for me.
That is your mid laner. I forgot that you had Big Man Tings on your draft out there. Luckily, maybe for me, I mean, we got one of my fantasy picks out here. We're going to talk to him in just a moment. Captain Twig, though, out here on the cleanup, putting out a 5-3 slash line here in game number 3 and finding a win with the Kings here in game number 3. Captain Twig, congrats on your win first off, and thanks for coming by for the post-game interview. Tell me about a little bit about the reset going into games 2 and 3. You know, you kind of had a bit of a rough patch in game number 1. What was that bounce back for you guys in those second ones?
It was hard, especially coming out of the set yesterday. I don't think we expected the games to be so hard this week. We came in really confident. We expected maybe 2 2-0s, maybe 2 2-1s, pretty easy. But like neither set went the way we wanted, especially with a game 1 loss. And the mood of everyone was really down after that game 1. And honestly, just staying calm. I think a lot of that's because of Biggie when he comes between games and just, you know, has more objective takes on everything, and Harry staying calm through the whole set, especially during that late game firefight, I think basically won us the set.
Yeah, kind of talking about Biggie here, because, you know, not all the coaches have made their way over here yet, can play, you know, with you guys here into the studio. How does that, having your coach directly here, how much more of an impact do you think that has for a team like you guys?
It's night and day for us, because he's kind of just a life coach, too. He lives with, I'm the only person who doesn't live in the team house, but he helps you live life. He gets you going to the gym, he gets you eating better, he gets you being more social, and he's more of a life coach than a game coach, in my opinion. And I mean, for us, it's night and day. We probably wouldn't be half the team without Biggie.
Well, it seems to be a real good coach out for you guys. Congratulations on your win today. I'll let you get back with a celebrate, and we'll see you guys next week.
Sweet.
That's actually a massive insight here onto the Kings. That was not quite the answer I was expecting, but talking about a night and day difference, not just an in-game coach, but an in-life coach. That's a I'm going to be honest with them. That kind of shocked me hearing an answer that deep there.
Dude, I guarantee you Biggie's out in the waiting room like crying right now, right? Those are very kind words to receive. And honestly, that is a massive impact that the team can have. Being able to get more social, finding that work-life balance is so important, not just in competitive Smite, but in all facets and all occupations in the world. And seems like Biggie's doing a good job there, and not only in the life balance, but goes into the studio or goes into the games between these matches and make sure that everyone's mental is reset and ready to go forward. That's huge, man. Biggie just went up like 3 tiers on Hazer's coach tier list.
Yeah, for sure out here. A great performance out of the Kings here in game number 1 of our day. Our first set now concluded. Camelot Kings, with their win over the Olympus Bolts, can move themselves up at least 1-1 in the standings for both of these teams. But we still got the Jade Dragons and the Solar Scarabs up next. A very coveted match here in the SPL. The former Dragon Slayers in the Solar Scarabs going up against the Jade Dragons, now in a more official rematch from their last time over at Worlds.
Yeah, I think the Dragon Slayer title can go back to them if they win this set, but if they don't, I'm not giving it back. The Solar Scarab is going to have to earn it, all right? And as of now, Season 9 might as well be a completely different game. I'm expecting the Jade Dragons to be the favorite here.
Yeah, I mean, the Scarabs are a team that during Phase 3 last year, they were talking a lot about we're going to be the most improved team. We're going to keep improving ourselves, and they were able to do so. They took a quarterfinal at Worlds, end up dropping down during the semis. Now they got a chance to reprise that and keep their run going here in Season 9. We'll see if they can reclaim the title of Dragon Slayers right after this.